Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Montgomery County, Maryland Department of Transportation Consolidated Transportation Program presentation. Happy Infrastructure Week to all who celebrate. We have with us tonight the Maryland Department of Transportation, Secretary Slater, and all of his business unit heads. Then we will hear from our county officials as they ask the department questions, followed by our municipal officials, and then we will get to our state legislative delegations going in reverse order. Let me offer an opportunity to the Senate Delegation Chair, Senator Kramer, for any opening remarks before we turn it over to the Secretary.
Thank you for that, Chair Corman. The only thing I would like to add to that is my thanks and gratitude to the leaders that we will be hearing from this evening. And it starts at the top with Secretary Slater. You know, what most people think about are the big projects, you know, major roads, major various infrastructure, but they don't think about all the little things that affect our daily lives. And I will share with you that when I have constituents that call me and it relates to the Department of Transportation, if I've called Secretary Slater, and I have been working with him for years now, when I call Secretary Slater, he takes the call and he understands how important it is that our constituents get the service that they're paying for. And I am most appreciative and grateful for all the incredible public service that Secretary Slater does and the rest of his team. And I will add that rarely a week goes by that I don't get a call with a constituent who has an issue with the Motor Vehicle Administration. And Administrator Nizer is always immediately on the job. She reaches out personally to whomever it is that is having the problem to get it resolved. And I am very grateful and appreciative for her incredible work. We've been working together since I was on the Judiciary Committee. And there were a lot of issues that we worked on together well before she was the administrator. But I would also like to add my thanks to Erica Rigby. She stepped into some big shoes that Andre Futrell left, and she's picked right up and has been exceedingly responsive to me and to my constituents. And Andre Futrell is still in the forefront on getting things done. So with that, Secretary Slater, the microphone is yours. And again, my appreciation for your public service.
Thank you so much, Senator Kramer. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Chair Corman as well, Chair, all the members of the delegation. Thank you for having us here today. It's been quite a 25-year journey for me. So, you know, I've been through kind of in and out and up and down this department for the last 25 years, but just thank you so much for your kind words about that and our team. I do want to just say thank you for inviting us here today. I'm going to provide an overview of our draft six-year Consolidated Transportation Plan. It's more commonly known as the CTP, and this covers fiscal years 22 to 27. Let me share a little bit about the team that's with us here today. We have from the State Highway Administration, we have Administrator Tim Smith, as well as our District Engineer, Erica Rigby. From the Maryland Transportation Authority, we have Executive Director Jim Ports. From the Maryland Transit Administration, I'm going to not read the word acting because we have Administrator Ali Arnold, who made an official appointment yesterday. We're really excited to get that out, as well as we have our Transit Development and Delivery Executive Director, Matt Pollack, who really oversees the day-to-day operations on the Purple Line, if those questions come up as well. From the Motor Vehicle Administration, we have Administrator Chrissy Nizer. From the Maryland Aviation Administration, we have our Executive Director, Ricky Smith, as well as our Planning and Engineering Chief, Paul Schenk. And then from the Secretary's Office, we do have a Regional Planner, Carrie Snyder, as well as Pilar Helm, our Director of Government Affairs. 2020 was a pretty challenging year for all of us. The COVID-19 pandemic led to significant decreases in travel and a significant drop in our revenues across the department. The good news is today that those trends have recovered in recent months. Today's travel volumes have reached and in some cases surpassed our pre-pandemic levels. During the peak of last year's stay-at-home order, traffic volumes dropped more than 50%. In the second week of October, traffic on Maryland highways was down just 6% compared to that same period in 2019. On the other hand, with Maryland's economy recovering and the supply chain trying to meet that growing demand, we have seen statewide truck volumes up more than 15% compared to 2019 levels. Maryland's toll facilities, our transactions for the second week of October were down just 2% compared to the same time period in 2019. During the peak of the stay-at-home order, our toll transactions were down 58%. Over at BWI Marshall, Thurgood Marshall Airport, we remain about 25% lower than 2019 levels, as that business travel is still kind of lagging behind that leisure travel, but our air traffic continues to grow on a weekly basis. The Port of Baltimore has really seen a robust rebound from the pandemic. You know, that consumer demand for goods and services, and Maryland has really emerged as a key hub for e-commerce on the East Coast. We just recently hosted Secretary Buttigieg, who visited the port and talked about the great progress we're doing down there. And then I just came off a visit from President Biden. So it was really great to see that national attention on the port. It truly is Maryland's port. In Montgomery County, we have a lot of businesses that use the port. Scheid Floors USA, Architectural Ceramics, Manoli Cannoli Imports. They all use the Port of Baltimore for their products and services. For more than a year over at the MVA, we've operated under an appointment-only environment to promote really the safety and health of our customers as well as our team. During that time, our agency has significantly expanded its online services through our Customer Connect program. And as a result, the appointment-only plus Customer Connect, MVA is now seeing more customers online than ever before, as well as serving more people overall than ever before. Also over at the MVA, our Maryland Highway Safety Office has also been hard at work in continuing to improve communication and transparency between our partners and to provide more timely information on the safety challenges that we have on our roadways so that we can all learn from these terrible tragedies. In 2020, there were 573 fatalities in Maryland, and one is too many. So now we will be providing monthly reports on our Zero Deaths Maryland Gov website, and it will show you the year to date of the fatality comparisons by jurisdiction so that we can all work together to try and curb these fatalities. The data will also show whether the individual was a motor vehicle driver, a passenger, or a pedestrian or cyclist. Over on the transit network, the Maryland Transit Administration has played a key role in making sure our essential workers could perform their critical duties during the pandemic. Today, ridership on MTA's core services remains consistent, and MTA continues to ensure our bus and rail services remain safe. We're getting about 60% of our pre-pandemic ridership on our core bus system, while the other modes over light rail, our MARC and Metro are recovering a little bit slower, but we did recently resume full scheduled service on MARC and commuter bus as we're starting to see some of those workers return on site. Of course, when it comes to MTA, the Purple Line is of great interest to everyone here. Despite the challenges, and there have been challenges, we're going to make progress, and we have been able to make some progress. We continue to move forward. We took oversight of 150 plus contracts to keep the project moving, while our concessionaire PLTP worked aggressively to bring in that new design build contractor. In the interim, what we've done is we've advanced the remaining design components. We've continued to move underground and overhead utilities, which are critical for progress once they get started. We've advanced the production of the rail cars, including procuring additional rail cars so that we can make sure that we're at a high level of service when the Purple Line opens. And we've made a lot of progress on the construction of the Glen Ridge Operations and Maintenance Facility. That's a really critical component in being able to bring those rail cars over to be able to start testing the Purple Line. Lastly, we obtained all the final approvals on the stormwater management permits for the Purple Line. And I know that was a challenging piece over the last 2 years. Last Friday, the selection of a new design build contractor was announced. It's Maryland Transit Solutions. They're a joint venture between Dragados USA and OHL USA. We're still finalizing some costs on things like insurance, the light rail vehicles as part of the design build contract, but it does get us one step closer to delivering the Purple Line. We're planning on taking this to the Board of Public Works with an updated P3 agreement that will include a new cost and schedule. The cost and schedule for the design build contractor is really just kind of one component. The overall piece that we have to take back to the board is the design build contractor with the complete design and construction, Purple Line Transit operators to provide technical input on the design and construction in advance, and then PLTP for management and oversight, and as we work through operations and maintenance components. So we're finalizing all of those final pieces. Once we have all those pieces, we'll be able to answer those critical questions like cost and schedule that I know everyone is really, really interested in. But we'll be taking that back to the Board of Public Works in the coming weeks and months. It is fair to say that we will see some increases in cost on the Purple Line, as we're seeing on all of our big projects across the state. Timelines have increased, material costs are up. We're seeing some labor shortages, and the construction industry has a lower appetite for risk than they did in 2016. So there are some factors we and the entire industry are facing in this post-pandemic market. It's a very different reality than we had in 2016. On a personal level, I think we can all relate to the increases in costs that we're seeing at the grocery store and the supply chain issues. So this is just a different scale for that. But we are confident that the design build contractor selected is going to deliver an exceptional project for us and take the time necessary to get it right. And we are looking forward to delivering the Purple Line. But the benefits of the Purple Line remain intact. It's still a huge benefit for the citizens of Maryland, and we're really excited about getting it back on track. Switching over to the CTP itself, the details, I'm pleased to announce today that our draft 22 to 27 CTP is $16.4 billion. That's $1 billion more than the capital program that we had last year. The final 21 to 26 program was 15.2. The largest drivers of the increase in revenue are, of course, the very critical COVID relief funds of $841 million that we did get from the federal government, and then revenue changes of $488 million. So the largest components of that were the motor fuel tax and our titling fees. Our motor fuel tax outperformed our models by about $255 million, and our titling fees are up 213 compared to what we had projected. So we're starting to see some recovery. This CTP focuses very heavily on system preservation, big projects, and then laying that foundation for planning and engineering. But just as important, the CTP is going to allow our system to contribute directly to Maryland's economy. More than half of this budget, $8.2 billion, is going directly into state of good repair. That's the largest percentage that we've ever had. And this is funding that's critical for bridges and rail and port and airport facilities and other infrastructure to get it into that state of good repair. But it also allows us to move forward with some of our major projects, the Howard Street Tunnel, the AB connector at BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport, our 695 triple bridges, our 695 traffic relief plan, our Purple Line, and the American Legion Bridge. I do want to kind of take a minute on the American Legion Bridge and just remind everyone that the comment period is still out there, still underway on the supplemental DEIS for Phase 1 South, which is American Legion Bridge to 370. We identified input from about 3,000 comments received so far, and we're continuing to move forward with that comment period and collect some feedback. Last week, we had 2 virtual public hearing sessions on the SDIS, and we're going to continue to work with the public and stakeholders moving forward. A little bit later in the presentation, MDTA is going to give you a little bit of an update on the toll rate setting process for the hot lanes that are proposed. But we are also investing in planning and engineering to build that shelf of projects for the next generation. Looking forward, we do believe we've weathered the worst of these COVID-19 revenue impacts and expect our revenues to return back to pre-pandemic levels by 2023. But those federal COVID relief funds were critical in helping us bridge that gap. But they're going to be almost entirely depleted by 2024. And the reason for our big focus on system preservation is that we have a significant backlog of state of good repair across our system. About $7 billion when you look at all the modes of transportation. You know, most of our infrastructure was built decades ago, and we're having to replace a lot of those assets at the same time. We have about a $2 billion backlog of state of good repair on our transit network. We have about $4 billion on the highway network, $750 million at our 2 main airports, about $100 million needed investment in our MVA facilities, and another $250 million needed over at the port. So we're looking to put that money completely to good use in that state of good repair. Finally, in this CTP, we are fulfilling our funding commitments to the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority by providing $2.7 billion in this CTP. As you can tell, state of good repair investments are a top priority for us right now. But we also are going to continue on trying to make progress at the same time by building intelligence into our assets, by focusing on delivering infrastructure projects that incorporates technology and flexibility and growth, providing a safe and accessible mobility choice for all users, including our bicyclists, our pedestrians, and our transit users, and that really important relationship between land use and transportation decisions, and trying to weave that into our processes as we move forward. But really establishing that sustainable customer-focused transportation vision that thinks about that system of roadway, transit, freight, air, and port infrastructure, because that's going to be the foundation for our budgets moving forward. A big part of how we deliver that vision will involve our federal partners. As I'm sure you were tracking, we've received significant aid from our federal partners through the CARES package and the CRISA package, as well as the ARPA package. But we've been tracking that as well as the infrastructure bill that was passed at what I learned today from Senator Van Hollen, 1232, I think it was. And so they did the heavy lift, and we're super, super grateful. But the benefits to Maryland on this infrastructure package are going to be significant over the next 5 fiscal years. So in total, we're looking at about $4.1 billion in that bill that has been directed to roads and highways, another $1.7 billion for transit, another $150 million for airports, just to name a few areas. And then we also have significant money that's coming into Amtrak and passenger rail that will directly benefit Maryland. And these figures include some of what was previously in the forecast. But if you just look at the additional funding, we're anticipating about $1 billion more on highways and bridges, about $200 million more at MTA for our transit services, and about $140 million more for Maryland Aviation, plus a tremendous amount of discretionary opportunities. But we expect significant investment across the state. While we are still working with our federal partners on kind of the timelines for when we're going to be able to access the dollars, our expectation right now is they're going to take over the next 6 to 8 weeks to work on kind of what federal buckets these go in, how they are going to administer the dollars. But we think after the first of the year, we're going to start to see those dollars start to flow a little bit and be able to be in a position to steer some of those investments pretty quickly. Recently, the governor announced about $16.8 million in grants to support our bike and pedestrian projects across the state. Thanks to the Kim Lamphere's Bike Network program, Montgomery County Department of Transportation is going to get a $52,000 grant for planning and concept designs for a bikeway network that's going to connect the Bethesda Trolley Trail and the North Bethesda White Flint Metro to Twinbrook Metro. Tacoma Park is going to receive about $254,000 for the final design of a bikeway along New Hampshire between Auburn Avenue and Poplar Avenue. And then Montgomery County will benefit greatly through our Transportation Alternatives Program. They're going to receive about $3.6 million to construct 2,500 linear feet of 8-foot wide shared use path along 355. That's going to be from Snowden River Parkway to just north of Clarksburg Road and just south of Clarksburg Road to Stringtown. And they're also going to receive about $46,000 to construct some pedestrian safety improvements at the intersection of 188 and Cordell Avenue, and receive another $20,000 for some work at 187 and Cordell for a pedestrian beacon. At this point, I'm going to take a pause. I'm going to turn it over to Administrator Tim Smith at the State Highway Administration to talk a little bit about their program. We're going to have all of our administrators give a quick update on their program, and then we're all going to be here to answer any questions that you may have and have any discussions that you may have. So thank you, and I'll turn it over to Tim.
Thank you, sir. Good evening to our state elected officials, as well as our county council members. As the secretary said, I'm Tim Smith. It's a pleasure to be here and an honor to lead the state highway team. Last year, our team focused very much on maintaining our existing construction and maintenance program while working through the pandemic following proper health practices. So what that allowed us to do was focus on delivering some great beneficial highway transportation projects, and a few great examples of those right here in Montgomery County include the Right there along I-270, we've continued to implement innovative congestion management enhancements. That's a $132 million package that combines both geometric as well as technology improvements that will result in more predictable and consistent commutes for hundreds of thousands of commuters on I-270 each day. So that package includes ramp metering on 22 northbound and 23 southbound entry ramps. So State Highway activated those 23 southbound ramps this past September, and we're anticipating activating the full system next year. In Hightstown, we completed a replacement of the 95-year-old bridge there at over Little Bennett Creek. That was a $12 million investment, and we completed that this past spring. In Clarksburg, we were partnering with Montgomery County, and we completed a Maryland 355 intersection right there at West Old Baltimore Road. That project included realigning West Old Baltimore Road, some drainage improvements, sidewalk, ADA compatible ramps. We included a shared use path along with culvert replacements, some signal construction, along with a water line. So that was a $13 million project, which the county contributed $7 million. And like I said, we completed that this past spring. And in Bethesda, well, we completed the Maryland 190 improvements there at Brayburn Parkway. That was just under a $2 million improvement that was very focused on safety for pedestrians, including the students going to Walt Whitman High School, as well as motorists. And as the secretary mentioned, we're definitely pivoting from where we were pre-pandemic, and especially with this infrastructure bill, we're kind of looking at what that means for State Highway. And I kind of wanted to emphasize just kind of three main areas as we build our shelf of projects for this next coming wave is really three areas. One's asset management or state of good repair. The second one's accessibility or safety. And the third is mobility. So let me dive down a little deeper into some of those. So projects with an asset management approach are really geared to provide kind of a long-term, but a sound transportation infrastructure for the next generation. That's really what we're thinking about. So we're trying to make the best decisions now using a long-term mindset. Accessibility projects are really about our vulnerable users, like pedestrians, bicyclists, scooters, as well as those using motor vehicles. So we're trying to connect them to life's opportunity, but also do that safely. So when the Secretary Slater was in my role in 2019, we introduced the context guide, but what we're trying to do now is fully implement that. So what that really means is building flexibility into our existing planning concepts and designs that can address the major issues for those vulnerable users. It's a bit of a culture shift for us, and I know I've spoken with several elected officials about this and how we transition and get that to a better place now. But it's an entire for the entire Maryland roadway industry, it's a bit of a culture shift. But we know by improving our procedures and how we plan and design through the lens of a context guide, as well as a Vision Zero goal, we can make our roadways safer for everyone. Mobility, the Secretary mentioned it, is just about, from our perspective, really about using technology. It's about utilizing our existing footprint and using those intelligent transportation systems like traffic cues, speed detection sensors, cameras, to make more efficient use of our existing highway infrastructure and being more environmentally friendly. And just the real big reason why we have the CTP tours and have these type of events is really just to meet with our stakeholders, gather your input, gather your feedback and insights, and use that to make the best decisions with the resources we have available. So I look forward to hearing your comments on that. So thank you for your time, and I'm going to turn it over to our teammate at MDTA, Jim Ports.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tim. For the record, my name is Jim Ports, Executive Director for the Maryland Transportation Authority, better known as MDTA. This year, the MDTA made great progress in preserving Maryland toll facilities and developing projects and studies to serve Marylanders into the future. In May, the MDTA announced the opening of the first public comment period as part of the toll rate range setting process for proposed hot lanes for Phase 1 South, the American Legion Bridge, I-270, I-370 project. The MDTA held in-person and virtual hearings in July, and the first public comment period for the proposed toll rate ranges ended in August. A second public comment period was held September 30th through October 28th to receive feedback from MDTA staff, recommended toll rate ranges, and as a result of comments received during the first comment period, the recommended toll rate ranges reflect a new base minimum per mile toll rate of 17 cents per mile which is lower than the 20 cents per mile proposed in May. The 17 cents per mile is consistent with the base off-peak minimum per mile rate for the ICC. And on November 18th, the MDTA will vote on the final staff recommended toll rate ranges. Members of the public can sign up to speak in person at that meeting before the board members vote. And information on sign up is on our website, mdta.maryland.gov. In February, the Tier 1 draft environmental impact statement for ongoing Chesapeake Bay Crossing study was made available for public view and comment at baycrossingstudy.com. The MDTA held in-person and virtual public hearings in April, and comment period ended in May. We expect to identify a selected corridor alternative and publish a combined final environmental impact statement and record of decision in the winter of 21 and 22. The MDTA implemented temporary all electronic tolling statewide in March of 2020 as part of its COVID-19 response, and we made all electronic tolling permanent in August of 2020. Construction for the highway speed all electronic tolling and new gantries and the removal or partial removal of the existing toll plazas is underway at the Fort McHenry Tunnel, JFK Memorial Highway, and the Nice Middleton Bridge. A study is also underway for the I-895 Baltimore Harbor Tunnel Plaza and interchange improvements, which will allow MDTA to bring highway speed all electronic tolling to the Harbor Tunnel. As you know, the MDTA launched Drive Easy MD, the new home for all things tolling in Maryland. The April launch of Drive Easy MD included new website, web chat, customer call center with expanded hours, text notifications, and more. Customers can now pay their tolls with Easy Pass, pay by plate, or video tolling. And I would say that Easy Pass is the best option. It gives you the most discounts for all Maryland Easy Pass users. The Easy Pass Maryland customers continue to receive the lowest Easy Pass rates with savings up to 77%. More features such as additional vehicle classes with lower toll rates and mobile app are coming soon. And lastly, major ongoing statewide projects also include the $1.1 billion I-95 Express Toll Lanes Northbound Extension Program to relieve congestion and improve travel along I-95 corridor northeast of Baltimore. Construction began in May on the major project to widen northbound I-95 between Maryland 43, which is White Marsh Boulevard, and Maryland 152 Mountain Road to make way for the extension to northbound express toll lanes. The extension is expected to open to traffic by 2024 to Maryland 152, and with the full extension to north of Maryland 24, open to traffic by 2027. With that, I thank you for your time, and I will now turn it over to official administrator Ali Arnold at the MTA.
Thanks, Jim. Hi, good evening, everyone. As he said, I am Holly Arnold, administrator for MTA. And I'd like to thank Secretary Slater for sharing the great news on our Purple Line progress. And I'd like to thank all of you for your leadership and enthusiasm for transit-oriented development and economic development around future Purple Line stations across Montgomery County. Just a few weeks ago, Purple Line Executive Director Matt Pollock joined many of you at the groundbreaking for the Crescent at Chevy Chase, a new 111-unit property across the street from the future Purple Line Connecticut Avenue station. And this is just one of many planned development projects spurred by the Purple Line, and we're excited to join you for more. MTA is one of the largest multimodal transit systems in the US. We operate local bus and commuter bus network, as well as light rail, metro subway, MARC train service, a comprehensive mobility paratransit system, and support the locally operated transit systems across the state. Our goal is to provide safe, efficient, and reliable transit across Maryland with world-class customer service. The COVID-19 crisis really highlighted the critical role that transit plays in connecting the region's residents to employment, healthcare, education, and other essential services. And as Secretary Slater noted, I'm very happy to report that as of August 30th, all of our modes have resumed full scheduled service. MTA continues to focus and make a significant capital investments in our state of good repair projects to ensure that the transit system remains a safe and reliable option for the region. Federal funding from the CARES Act, CRISA, and ARPA programs have filled some of our operating funding gaps and allowed us to advance state of good repair needs. One example of this key state of good repair investment includes $54 million to overhaul 63 Mark III passenger coaches. And we're going to continue to prioritize funding for state of good repair projects across all our modes, with a particular focus on our older assets. We're also focused on investing in our facilities, including the $65 million Mark Riverside Heavy Maintenance Facility that's currently under construction in Baltimore. When it's finished, the state-of-the-art facility will enable MTA to enhance our locomotive and railcar maintenance capabilities and will help support major transit infrastructure investments along the entire Northeast corridor. We're also preparing for the future of transit. Recently, we published the agency's strategic plan for the next 5 years. It's titled Rebuilding Better, Committed to an Equitable Transit Future. And the plan will guide our recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic and identifies priorities to create a brighter future for transit by focusing on technology, communication, and collaboration, with equity as that central focus. And the commitments in the plan build upon the strong foundation of progress that MTA has established to improve the transit experience and system reliability for our riders, including continued recognition for the safest transit system in the US for the last 7 years, implementation of our Charm Pass mobile ticketing app, improving our bus reliability with dedicated bus lanes, and expansion of real-time information to Mark Train and commuter bus in the past year. The full plan is available on the MTA website for review. MTA is also undertaking our first 50-year statewide transit plan. We anticipate having the draft plan available for public comment by the end of this year. It builds upon existing regional and local plans across the state and is going to outline a 50-year vision for transit in Maryland to help define those needs across the state for future generations. We appreciate the county's support so far, and we look forward to continuing to work with Montgomery County and stakeholders across the state to develop this long-term vision and framework for that coordinated transit service in Maryland. And also here in Montgomery County, MTA is working on our Brunswick Line Master Plan to outline future service and infrastructure investments for that line. We anticipate having a draft ready for public comment in the next couple of months. And I'll close by noting the significant investment that MTA provides for transit in Montgomery County by providing $36 million in operating and capital grants to support the local transit operation, Montgomery County Ride On. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Montgomery County will also receive $93 million in federal relief funds to support transit operations and capital needs for the county. Thank you again, and I'll now turn it over to Chrissy Nizer at MVA.
Thank you, Holly, and it's certainly a pleasure to be with you all this evening. At MDOT MBA, we remain focused on providing that premier customer service, both inside our branch offices as well as through our alternative services. As the Secretary mentioned, we do remain appointment only, but frankly, the appointment process has allowed us to serve our customers more efficiently and have that really great experience when they do come to see us. Our online and kiosk services are obviously a critical component of what we do now more than ever. I'll say that over the last 20 months, it really has allowed us to reevaluate how we provide service to customers, and we've made some significant changes and continue to do so. Several of those changes, I want to thank the legislators for helping us to enact because they required law changes, and just to make sure you're aware of some of these great things that have gone into effect. You used to only be able to renew your license or your ID card 6 months before that expiration date. Now you can do that up to a year. That's great for our military members, students who might be out of state, or people traveling. So that's a nice customer convenience we have. It used to be regardless of whether or not you had to come in to see us in between because you lost your license and maybe you moved and had to change your address. You still had to get your photo taken every other time, I should say, when you were renewing. Now, if you come in to visit us in between and we get that photo taken, that can be used for your next renewal. So that, again, is a nice convenience. And for your vision certification, we increased the period of time that's good for from 1 year to 2 years. That's consistent with industry standards. So again, that'll allow people to renew alternatively more because your doctor can actually submit those results to us electronically, or they can fill out the form as they've done in the past. But just more ways that we enable those online transactions to occur. The statistics that really show that people are taking to those transactions. So when you compare March to August of 2019, to this year, the increase is actually 45%, which is pretty remarkable. In part, that is because of our new IT modernization system called Customer Connect. We did implement phase 1 in July of 22. That was essentially our vehicle related system. And we're really excited about getting ready to deploy our driver system that's coming up on December 6th. That really will give us that full deployment, that 360 view of the customer we've talked about for a long time. So regardless of what agent waits on you, they'll be able to see all your MBA records. You'll actually have the ability to establish an online account with us where you can see all your vehicles, all your driver license. You can see if you're a CDL driver, your medical certificate, and any endorsements that you might have, any correspondence we sent you. So it really allows the customer to take control of their MBA experience and have more information right there at their fingertips. So we're really excited about that. I do want to give everybody a heads up that due to that system modernization, we will be closed on Friday, December 3rd. We've been putting out all kinds of notices to the public, but just in case you hear anything from your constituents, it does help that we are appointment only, so we're able to control. Obviously, nobody's making an appointment that day, but just so you're aware in case you get any questions coming into your offices. Some of the other good things that are coming with that deployment. So our driver's license number, you might also have heard it called a SoundX number. It is an algorithm made up of the first letter of your last name and your date of birth, and many of you are familiar with this. Unfortunately, like most formulas, smart people figure out how to replicate that, and there are websites out there that show you how to figure out somebody's SoundX number if you know enough information. So with our deployment, we'll be going away from the SoundX number. We'll be going to what we are calling a new Maryland ID, which is a randomly generated number. That number will stay with you regardless if you change your last name or have to make another modification to your record with us. And again, that'll be much more secure. The reality is we know your driver's license number is used for many more things than just your MBA service, and so we take that very seriously. So we're excited about that security improvement we're making. Also for our commercial drivers, currently they're only able to get a 5-year license, where our non-commercial licensees can get an 8-year license. When we go to Customer Connect, they'll also be able to get an 8-year license. So for our commercial drivers, trying to make sure that they have all those important conveniences, because we know they're on the road frequently, and that can be challenging. I know the Real ID has been a significant issue we've talked about over the years, so I want to provide a quick update there. We're actually up to 84% Maryland residents being Real ID compliant, which is just phenomenal. I've been really impressed with how Marylanders have responded. We are one of the highest in the country in terms of that compliance rate, but the federal government has pushed off the date for obvious reasons due to the pandemic and concerns with travel. So that new deadline is not until May of 2023. So for those Maryland residents who've not yet taken action, they have time to do so during their regular renewal period. So that should be a reassurance to them as well. As the Secretary indicated, even though travel on Maryland roads was significantly down last year, unfortunately, we still saw the highest number of fatalities since 2008. And really concerning is seeing that high rate of speed on the roadways, as well as dangerous driving behavior. Even on major roadways, we've seen several instances with just behavior that should never happen on a roadway. We are really excited about the enhancements Secretary Slater referenced in terms of our Zero Deaths MD website. I would encourage you to go there and let us know what your thoughts are. It does show that breakdown, as he mentioned. In terms of the individual, it also shows a county by county breakdown. There's some more detailed information that you can get into if you want to. So I'd love to hear feedback about that. We were also happy that we're able to announce more than 247 for highway safety organizations and law enforcement agencies, specifically in Montgomery County, that'll help address highway safety, as well as our highway safety office continues to push the new campaign called Be the Driver. Maybe you've seen some of the images there, but it really focuses on each and every one of us having that responsibility while we're behind the wheel, and the idea that it's all about all of us coming together in order to really reach that role or that number of 0 fatalities, which I know is all of our goal. And whether it's highway safety or customer service, we really are focused on being the best in everything we can do. I certainly appreciate Senator Kramer's kind remarks, but the reality is I'd like there to be a day when he doesn't get those calls coming into the office, and that's when I really know I've done my job. But certainly we want to take care of everybody as best as we can, but it's really about our employees. It's not about really about them. Sorry about that, dogs in the background. But they've really done a phenomenal job during the pandemic. They've been out there on the front lines, and I just always like to take the opportunity to thank them for the great role they've played. So thank you for your time. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ricky Smith at the Maryland Aviation Administration.
Okay, all right. And first of all, thanks a lot, Chrissy, for your unexpected lead-in. And thank you all for having time this evening. Apologize for the delay. And so throughout the pandemic, we have collaborated with state and federal leaders, public health officials, and our partners to ensure safe, healthy airports for our customers and employees at BWI, Thurgood Marshall Airport, and Martin State Airport. Our airport communities remain focused on providing healthy and safe travel. The strong recovery that we have experienced reflects the confidence that our customers feel with the safe, comfortable travel services they receive. In fact, the recovery at BWI Marshall Airport leads the region with growing passenger traffic and new airline service. I am particularly proud of the work from our employees during the pandemic and the fact that BWI Marshall was named the top North American airport in its size category in the 2020 Airport Service Quality Awards. The ASQ program recognizes global airports for delivery of best customer service as measured by passengers. To receive this honor during the pandemic, the most challenging time in our history, was a remarkable achievement. Throughout the pandemic, we continue to innovate and provide new services and amenities for our passengers. For example, the $48 million 5-gate extension of Concourse A that offers new food and retail concessions, upgraded restrooms, and more capacity for Southwest Airlines. And our new state-of-the-art electric vehicle charging stations, which are an important collaboration with BGE to boost charging infrastructure in our region. Moving forward, our capital program remains focused on improving facilities and services for our customers while creating opportunities for domestic and international air service. System preservation and resiliency are major focal points for MAA's capital program. Driven by the need to provide exceptional service to our customers in the safest, most reliable, and efficient manner, system preservation projects include an airport-wide restroom renovation program, aviation fuel storage replacement and expansion, electrical feeder replacements, airfield lighting vote upgrades, and passenger boarding bridge replacements. Additionally, as a designated general aviation reliever to BWI Marshall, improving the facilities at Martin State remains a key component to maintaining an efficient regional aviation system that balances the needs of commercial, corporate, personal, emergency response, and military aircraft operations. After a short pause due to the pandemic, we are moving forward with key major multi-year terminal improvement to the center of operations for Southwest Airlines, the largest airline partner at BWI Marshall. The Concourse AB connector and baggage handling system project will transform a major portion of the airport, creating an enhanced travel experience for passengers and supporting future growth for Southwest. The improvements will include direct concourse to concourse connectivity for passengers, new food and retail concessions, modern restrooms, and expanded airline hold rooms, all sitting atop a new state-of-the-art baggage handling system. This large-scale project will be largely funded by airport revenue bonds, which we issued for the first time ever this past summer. The bond issuance was well received by rating agencies and investors. We also are moving forward on major site preparation and utility work that will support construction of a major aircraft maintenance facility for Southwest Airlines, the first such maintenance hangar in the Northeast for the carrier. MAA will continue to support aviation and airports across Maryland by working with our 35 public use airports in the state. For the statewide aviation grants program that provides important state funding and support for airport improvement projects, MAA intends to administer some $1.6 million in grants during fiscal year 2022 for regional airports across Maryland. I want to thank Secretary Slater for his continued support for aviation across the state. As the global aviation industry continues to recover and rebound across MAA, we are working to provide excellent service for our customers. We remain committed to excellent service and convenience for our customers at BWI Marshall and Martin State Airport. With that, I'll turn it back over to Secretary Slater. Greg.
Thank you so much, Ricky, and thank you to the whole team. But we are thankful for being here today, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have. I was going to turn it back over to the county executive, but I do want to make sure he's on. He was chatting with me that he had to jump off to another call, but he was going to jump back on. But
Great,
I'm not
Mr.
sure if-
Secretary. Thank you so much. Thanks to you and your team for the thorough presentation as always, and congratulations to Holly Arnold. We should have said that up front. If the county executive's not on, we're actually going to do the whole county panel, I think, at the same time. So
Okay.
if it's not available. Council President Hooker and I think Councilman Reamer are on. Just a reminder to our county colleagues, we don't have formal time limits for this, but there's a lot of people who have questions and concerns they want to express as well. So I think it looks like we're going to start with Council President Hooker unless the county executive chimes in.
I hear you loud and clear, Mr. Chairman. Glad to see everybody tonight. Thank you so much for having me and inviting me to speak tonight on behalf of the council members. I know Councilmember Katz and Reamer are here and maybe others that I haven't seen. As Council President and Chair of the Transportation and Environment Committee, let me first thank you, Delegate Corman, and new Chairman Kramer, congratulations. Secretary Slater, great to see you as well, and all of our terrific senators and delegates. It's great to be with all the administrators. Congratulations, Administrator Arnold, and all the local officials that are with us tonight and all the partners as well. As you know, Montgomery County is the state's most populous jurisdiction, the state's largest local economy. Over 1 million residents call Montgomery County home, and hundreds of thousands more from neighboring jurisdictions commute and travel through our boundaries. And they're all counting on us to ensure that we move all our residents and workers through our county safely and efficiently. So that's why we're all thrilled about the historic infrastructure bill. I'm excited that 1.7 billion of the 6 billion coming to Maryland is designated for improving and expanding our public transit. I'm very hopeful this investment will go toward truly sustainable, multi-generational improvements to enhance connections between our region's job centers, neighborhoods, and essential workers by public transit. I'm excited for what this means for critical projects that are already in the works. My kids, like yours, Mr. Chairman, have developed a lot of expertise on the Purple Line due to my rambling monologues as I pass construction sites on their way to school. So I'm looking forward to boring them with details about many more projects that you all will deliver in the coming years. Let me get right to it. First, Mr. Secretary, it's great that the new construction partner has been selected to complete the Purple Line. Our constituents, as you know, have put up with years of delay and disruption, so we look forward to seeing that project move forward expeditiously. We're very eager to see an updated timeline for the Purple Line's completion and more details on the $375 million in the CTP. In terms of WMATA, we ask for the state's assistance in funding our 2 top WMATA priorities. Those are critical to regional connectivity, particularly in areas where residents rely heavily on public transit. The first is the new north entrance to the White Flint Metro, estimated to cost $35 million. We've already budgeted 25% of that. We hope to find a private sector partner for the rest. We also ask for state support of implementation of Metro Extra service on Maryland 586 and 355 between Wheaton and Montgomery College, until which time the Veers Mill Road BRT line can be funded and built. And speaking of BRT, as you know, we have plans for several major corridors within Montgomery County, most of which are state highways. These include Veers Mill and 355. They expand to New Hampshire Avenue, University Boulevard, and other major corridors in the long term. MCDOT is currently performing preliminary engineering and design for Veers Mill Road, Maryland 586 and 355. And once that's completed, it will be very important to receive state funding to move those projects forward to final design and construction phases. We're also working to improve the existing Flash BRT service on US 29, which has been very successful. And of course, there's interest, as you know, Mr. Secretary, from Howard County in connecting with that as well. And we just had the speaker there just a couple weeks ago to tour that facility, which has enormous project for the whole eastern side of Montgomery County and Howard County as well. Also, the Great Seneca Transit Network is another project MCDOT has developed as a near-term solution that provides greater direct, safe, and affordable transportation to connections in the area. We're working to advance the planning and design and implementation of that network as well. Those corridors connect some of our most high-density communities and equity emphasis communities and high needs Vision Zero communities. So they check a lot of boxes. Bringing those projects closer to completion are vital for the future of economic county and the economic success of the state. The construction of the CCT is the most effective tool to unlock 6.4 million square feet of commercial development in the Great Seneca Science Corridor, arguably the most important economic development opportunity in the whole state of Maryland. We have to do everything we can to advance that. And as you mentioned earlier, Montgomery County is in the 4th year of our Vision Zero plan, with kids back in school, more cars on our roadways. Creating safe and walkable and bikeable streets is a top priority for all of us. So we ask that the state increase funding to address sidewalk gaps, crosswalk conditions, trail crossings, and many other issues in support of our Vision Zero action plan, with an emphasis on urban and suburban communities and transit access. Many of our highest need locations and our most dangerous pedestrian and cyclist areas are located on state highways. Nearly all our fatalities, as you know, Mr. Secretary, are on state highways, where many residents walk and bike and wait for the bus to get to school or work. And speaking of state highways, MDOT's engagement and support is critical to our highway priorities as well. We have spoken many times about the Forest Glen Montgomery Hills project. We really want that to be part of your legacy. I see you nodding vigorously, and we don't want to wait for that. We would also, you know, that project will improve a major gateway into the Silver Spring Central Business District. It'll improve safety and accessibility within both of those communities, which have been awaiting a very, very long time for those necessary improvements. We would also ask you, and Senator King will nod at this one, to restart the design of the Maryland 119 Clopper Road improvements now that the Watkins Mill interchange is open, and Senator Kagan as well. Traffic patterns on 117 are changing very substantially. They require a lot of upgrades to address pedestrian and driver safety. This is a huge priority for Councilmember Katz as well. And I want to say, we ask that the SDEIS public comment period needs to really be extended to a full 120 days rather than ending this upcoming Monday. This is a very important, complicated document with long-lasting impacts. And so providing the right amount of public comment period is critical to building public support and confidence in the process. So thank you so much for your attention to our priorities. Thank you. Let me once again thank all our great representatives in Annapolis for continually fighting for the needs of Montgomery County residents. I know how hard you work and how hard your jobs are. We don't know if we'll ever be in a federal funding environment like this again in our lifetimes. Our kids and our grandkids will be asking us, what did you do in 2021 and 22 to make sure that we have the transportation environment that we deserve? And everyone's counting on us to come through. Mr. Secretary, we're grateful for your partnership and looking forward to your hard work in the future for Montgomery County. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me just kind of make a couple of quick comments. As always, you hit us with a lot. You have a lot of detail because I know you're super engaged in transportation. I think we have a lot of shared priorities and a lot of shared vision for addressing these issues. Just a couple of quick points I'll make, and happy to kind of follow up as well. One is I did talk to SHA Administrator Smith last couple of weeks and looking at opportunities to increase some of our sidewalk funding, and he and I both agree on that. And I think we want to really make some stronger investments on that, as well as some of our really trying to fill in some of the gaps on our pedestrian network where we really don't have appropriate facilities. At the same time, we're trying to find opportunities to really slow traffic down in a lot of these areas. We really need to address kind of both of that and provide a really safe environment for our pedestrians and our bicyclists, especially in these urban areas, but also really significantly in some of these suburban areas where the traffic tends to be a little bit higher speed. So we'll continue to work with you on that, addressing those issues. But we have a shared vision on a need for additional investment there. And I think there could be some opportunities. You know, I love Montgomery Hills. So, you know, that one is one we talk about a lot, and we're going to continue to keep kind of pushing on that one a little bit. Utilities is kind of the next step, but, you know, ultimately we got to get the construction done, and that's when we're going to see the real investment. But finally, I'll say that with construction going to crank back up in the spring, I'm always up for influencing the next generation into a good construction site. If you want to bring the kids down to the purple line.
Right. I'll take you up on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And to the port.
Absolutely.
Great. I think we can now shift over to the county executive who is able to rejoin us. Mr. County Executive. Just make sure you unmute.
So thank you very much. I want to thank MDOT and SHA for their engagement and offering us this chance to comment. And I want to thank all of our senators and delegates for being here to pay attention. Hopefully this helps inform the discussion that we're going to have going forward with the state. We continue to be, let's start with things we're happy about. Cooperating with the state, particularly on state highways and achieving speed limit reductions on state highways has been a big thing. Efforts to improve bicycle and ped safety, like the old Georgetown road diet, that's a big thing for us. And engagement in bus stop safety audits and county-led safety improvements are also important. I want to thank you for our discussion about being able to use those wonderful little cones that can be used to make the pedestrian crossings and intersections safer without spending a lot of money redesigning the entire intersections. This is significant. I find it very useful, and I'm very hopeful that we get to continue doing this. And I think it's going to make a big difference in the county. So we're beginning to see the first ones here. I got envious because I was seeing these in the District of Columbia. And I was like, well, if I'm going to see it there, I should be able to see it here in Montgomery County. And so that opportunity for us is really important. We are interested in getting, more support for expansion of automated traffic controls, for speed enforcement, for red light running, for bus lane use, which is only going to become a bigger issue in the county. We know that enforcement of bus lanes is absolutely critical to being able to make a bus rapid transit system actually work. And if we can't do that, we are going to struggle to achieve the things that we've been trying to achieve with that. We are anxious to move forward with some of the other smaller projects in the county. I want to thank you for getting the purple line to the point that it's actually at right now. That's another project that at least is back on track. We're hopeful we can see this sooner rather than later. And hopefully you've been able to bring in a partner that will be able to finish the job expeditiously.
Did we lose the county executive or is that me?
No, I think we did.
The county executive. We lost him.
Okay, I obviously will give him a chance to continue, but Council President, the only other council member who signed up was Councilman Reamer, so I'll turn it over to him with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you. Perhaps the county executive will rejoin us here momentarily. Thanks for the opportunity to share comments with you tonight, the Department of Transportation and our spectacular delegation. It's great to be here. I'm just going to focus on the question of delivering a priority transit project for Montgomery County with toll revenue from the American Legion Bridge and 270 projects. In July of 2021, the majority of the Montgomery County Council agreed with the Maryland Department of Transportation to support adding toll lane capacity to the American Legion Bridge and I-270, consistent with our longstanding position and previous master plan votes. As part of that process, the council secured an agreement from Secretary Slater and the governor to use toll revenue from the project to build a high priority transit project in Montgomery County. This agreement was memorialized in the resolution adopted by the Council of Governments Transportation Planning Board. Referring to the finances of this plan, the TPB resolution that we voted for said that MDOT will work collaboratively with Montgomery County to develop plans for construction, final delivery, and operation funded through ongoing toll revenue of a priority transit project such as Phase 1 of the Corridor Cities Transitway, Bus Rapid Transit in the Maryland 355 corridor, or other high priority projects. This funding agreement represents an important step forward to address the transportation needs of Montgomery County and particularly the Up County. It was not long ago that the state had removed construction funding for the Quarter Cities Transitway entirely from the CTP. We understand that financing for the project is contingent upon contracts that have not yet been signed, meaning that the revenue sources are not yet available to program the project. We also recognize that the county has not yet designated the priority transit project that it wants to build. With that in mind, our county and state should work together to finalize a memorandum of understanding this upcoming winter, 2022, signed by the county and state that will specify the county's designated priority transit project and the state's financing plan for that project as the culmination of a public engagement process that will also include public hearings. As you know, the Montgomery County Council will soon begin reviewing transit options through our quarter forward functional master plan. This process will provide valuable analytical and public engagement resources for our work together. Bringing a bus rapid transit to 355, for example, would help Montgomery County move forward with many important goals. It will enable us to transform Rockville Pike from a suburban highway to the spine of a thriving city. It will enable an alternative to driving and help create more jobs locally so that our Up County residents do not have to commute such long distances. It will provide a way for our future growth to be more transit focused, since current transit service there is inadequate to support transit-oriented development. We look forward to working with you in a collaborative manner to deliver the kind of transportation investments that this county has been seeking for decades. As we work through this process and reach agreements, we would like to see the final CTP reflect those agreements. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilman. Let me just kind of touch on a few of those points because I think there are a couple of really important ones as well. We're absolutely committed to working with you on that. There are three kind of components to transit as part of the project that are our focus, and that's one big part of it, but there are two other parts as well. And so we're happy to work with you on that. The real vision in that corridor is that it needs to be a multimodal corridor. I think back probably 10 years ago when we originally did the 270 CCT project together, that was the vision then, and that's what it needs to be now. So the real vision is to try and find a transit project that can work in conjunction with that and really make that a multimodal corridor. And we are absolutely committed to working with you on that one. The other two pieces that we are working through as part of the project is one, in the NEPA document, there are some smaller kind of transit pieces, and that's parking garages and transit facilities and those types of things. And they're smaller kind of pieces and components of the project. They're separate from what you're talking about there and in conjunction. But then the third part that we haven't really talked a whole lot about is kind of working in collaboration with Virginia to be able to provide some transit service, some frequent bus service between the two states using ultimately the HOT lanes and being able to provide that service in partnership with Virginia. So it's really about kind of those three buckets. And then as we work and get that advanced, so the idea is we get there and we come to a consensus on what that transit project is going to be. We get to a financial close on that development rights fee. We're able to program those engineering dollars, get that started, and then lay out that whole plan of operations and construction and lay that out, working in collaboration. And I'm glad to hear that you're really thinking about this through a public engagement standpoint. I've been watching very closely the corridor forward progress over at Maryland National Capital Park and Planning, because I think that can really inform a lot of the decisions and really the direction that we want to take, because I do think that has a pretty thoughtful public engagement process as well. And at the end of the day, it's just not a couple of us kind of saying, let's do this project or this project. It's more of a real thoughtful planning process on what's the best complementary transit project to move up and down the 270 corridor. So I'm happy to continue to work with you on that and continue to see how we move that forward.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I appreciate that very much.
Great. Thank you, Councilman. Council President, do you have one last thing before we shift to our municipal partners?
Very quickly, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very quickly, Mr. Secretary, since you asked for questions, I'd like you to just comment on how committed are you to use, now that we have a new Purple Line general contractor, how committed are you to use local and MDE contractors on the new contract? I wrote to Kevin Quinn about this in previous years, about the compliance requirements. We went back and forth about how you were doing. I continue to hear a lot of concerns from local contractors that they've been shut out of the project, and that you're using an out-of-state firm now for your MBE solicitation. So I just would love to give you the opportunity to sort of respond to that, because I think it's going to be an ongoing concern, particularly given Montgomery and Prince George's County's composition.
Yeah, I'm 100% committed to that. And in fact, the company that we've selected has come in and really laid out kind of local participation, as well as a lot of the MBEs and DBEs. I can follow up with you and give you kind of percentages on kind of the ones that were there before and the ones that are still there. You know, so we took over direct management of about 150 contracts. We didn't have the resources to be able to use them all. So that may have been part of the issue, is maybe just all of them weren't active. But our local contractors, our MBEs, our DBEs, and our small businesses are an absolutely critical part of our success for this project, as well as the entire industry for Maryland. So I'm 100% committed to advocating for them as part of this project and keeping them as part of this project.
Would you be, thank you, that's really helpful. I'd like to rebuild confidence in this among a lot of our local contractors. If you might be willing to, you know, put us in touch, and we could bring in some of our local companies and associations that represent, you know, MBEC and the Maryland Washington Minority Contractors Associations, others, get them to the table and give them an opportunity to talk to your contractors now and plug into the whole project, because I think everybody has something to contribute.
Absolutely, we can. And so, you know, our labor agreements are all still in place as well. So, you know, we'll continue to work through that. But I think that's a great idea. We'll see if we can get to the point where we can facilitate almost like a meet and greet or a workshop or a get together with our new design build contractor and some of the local firms. And, you know, we can use Metropolitan Washington with their great leader, Wayne Frazier, and some of the businesses there, as well as groups like Maryland Transportation Builders Association. Happy to do that.
Great. Appreciate that very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Thank you to our county partners. We'll now turn to our municipal friends, starting with Mayor Newton on behalf of the City of Rockville.
Great, thank you. Delegate Corman, good evening, and thank you all for the opportunity to comment on behalf of the City of Rockville. And thank you very much for the update on the CTP and the positive news for the Purple Line and the ongoing payments to WMATA. We know how important that is. We may not be supporters of the I-270 495 P3, but we are supporters of good planning and equitable options for all Marylanders to have safe and accessible transportation options in every sector. Some of what I'm going to say tonight has been said before. This is a boondoggle, the P3. It's a disaster for equity and for our climate, and it is a waste of taxpayer dollars. And I see the smiles, but yes, it is going to be a waste of taxpayer dollars. As Administrator Smith mentioned earlier, the I-270 Innovative Congestion Management Program is 77% complete and cost $132 million. He mentioned the ramp metering, but also mitigation that has been put in place as additional auxiliary lanes between interchanges, extension of acceleration and deceleration lanes, and reconfiguration and restriping of existing lanes. They've all combined to maximize traffic operations on the 34.4 miles between 495 and 70, which is the same 34.4 miles in the I-270 P3. So what happens to all of that work that you all have just done, which actually has eliminated a great deal, if not all, of the congestion between 370 and 495? This $132 million on the Innovative Congestion Management Program is in addition to the $45 million that the Board of Public Works just approved last week as supplemental to the $90 million previously approved by the BPW for the P3. The City of Rockville has asked the state about monitoring data. Are the new mitigations on 270 working? And we've yet to receive a response. So that will be my first question for this evening. Are the mitigations that were put in place on I-270 as part of the $132 million I-270 Innovative Congestion Management Project to help improve safety, reduce congestion, and save drivers up to 30 minutes on their morning commute working? You can hold that question if you'd like. The SDEIS notes that there will be extensive and irreversible impacts to over 500 acres of tree canopy. Just finishing up in Glasgow tomorrow is the COP26 climate conference. Experts have said that protecting forests must be part of our steps to protecting our climate. The idea being that limiting deforestation as one step will slow global warming. So the second question from the city would be, how does the SDIS information that the P3 will devalue over 500 acres of trees, plus add untold vehicles and carbon pollution, help our climate and help the health of people in our communities? My last question is about the amount of property required under the preferred alternative. Of the total 115.9 acres of property required, the Rockville analysis area community would experience the largest proportion, 38% of those impacts. 114 impacted parcels, 40.1 of which will be permanently impacted, and 3.8 will have temporary impacts. The Potomac analysis area community would experience the second largest proportion at 21.7, and the city of Gaithersburg analysis area community would experience the smallest proportion of property impacts at 4.1%. According to table 4-14 of the property types in the summary right-of-way acquisitions and impacts from the preferred alternative, there are 389 residential properties that will be impacted and 112 businesses or other properties that will be impacted. Julius West Middle School is set to lose 1.8 acres. The Montgomery County Detention Center site is set to lose 3.7 acres. And the Rockville Senior Center is set to lose over an acre. Please be reminded that in the city of Rockville, we have thousands of homes that back up to I-270, some within 10 feet or less of the wall. Residents aren't called out individually in the SDIS, so we don't know exactly which ones or how severely. According to the SDEIS, and I quote, properties immediately adjacent to the improved highway may experience an increase in noise impacts as travel lanes are moved closer to properties. However, the increased noise experienced by properties set back from the highway would be negligible, end quote. Our home is about 3/4 of a mile from I-270, as are 3 of my colleagues on the council. The noise increase is exponential, and it is because, in part, the racing of the cars and the mufflers, which I know hopefully the General Assembly will be dealing with 2 of those issues in the upcoming session. But I can tell you, when we leave our windows open at night, you feel like you're living on the highway. So my final question is a 3-parter, and I hated 3-parters in college. Why the rush to close the comment period on the SDEIS when so much more is known now than just 6 months ago as to impacts? And so little time is allowed to give a thorough review and response. We are asking you once again to please extend the time. Is a toll road still the best alternative now that you've successfully fixed the problem from 370 to 495? And what will the total out-of-pocket toll charges be? Earlier tonight, we heard a floor of 19 cents a mile. That's almost $7 one way. Thank you for your time this evening, and I look forward to future dialogue and continuing the partnership with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Newton. I too look forward to always a continued dialogue, and I always look forward to seeing you. I'm happy to always continue to work with you. Let me kind of touch on a few and just kind of see, maybe Tim can add a little bit on the operations piece. So, you know, the transportation systems and management and operations strategies that we've put out on 270 are absolutely working. They've been an effective strategy. They've been able to manage the traffic as they can in those kind of areas. I think what we're trying to monitor really is how we find that right balance between the interstate system and the local system. You know, so as those manage, as the traffic will grow, I think that the idea for that solution was really more about kind of managing the traffic today, not kind of 10 years, 20 years from now. So I think we're just trying to manage the balance between those. What the last thing we want to do is kind of make sure we fix all the traffic on 270, but then the local roads are clogged. So we want to kind of find that balance in that system. But as we kind of move forward on the comment period, we are working pretty closely with our federal partners on kind of where we can go and how we can do that and those types of things. So we should be able to kind of resolve that issue relatively quickly, but we're continuing to work with them. The challenge we have is just not a whole lot of new information in the supplemental DEIS. So a lot of it has been out there. So we're just trying to work closely with our federal partners on how we can best address that. When it comes to kind of the property side, I'd be happy to kind of sit down with you, our team. We put a lot of work into really outside of the supplemental DEIS on how we can minimize even further. And we've made significant progress to that. I think a great example of that, and I recognize it's not in Rockville, but using it as an example, because we're applying a lot of those practices up and down the corridor, is the Gibson Grove property, where we've been able to really minimize the impacts there. We did find some historic grave sites that were actually within the state right of way. And so we actually we were able to move that back and not impact that property at all. And it's our intention to make that property whole and work very closely with the church and the caretakers there to see if we can, what I'll say, right that wrong when the Beltway originally went through that area. But I'm always happy to continue to work with you. I'm always happy to even kind of sit down and go through plans and kind of work through some things and share as much as we have and just be an open book. I hope you know that, but I'm happy to continue to work with you.
Yeah, you've always been, and really, we'd like to drive this conversation a little bit differently. So I thank you for that and for your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Newton. We'll now turn to Councilman Harris on behalf of the city of Gaithersburg.
Thank you very much. First of all, I apologize for my voice. I came down with a touch of laryngitis just in time for this session, so I will try to do my best. First of all, I'd like to thank the secretary and state staff, as well as the county elected officials and the state elected officials that are here. Working on transportation is something it's actually one of the prime reasons why I stood for elective office 7 years ago. And it's been a long struggle that will be ongoing, considering the very significant transportation challenges we have in this region. So first of all, we would like to thank Councilmember Hucker for teeing up a couple of our subjects. First of all, Highway 117. Phase 1 was completed some time ago, but phases 2 and 3, which extend as far as Long Draft, are not in the plan at this point. We would like to see something done about those for a number of reasons. First of all, with the Watkins Mill interchange, which we're very happy to have, traffic has considerably increased. And there were a number of plans involved in that corridor, including the concept of expanding the use of the Metropolitan Grove MARC rail station, perhaps for a bus O&M facility as part of the potential CCT and other BRT plans. We're already, and given my personal proximity, and I take the road up Long Draft and across Clopper and up Watkins Mill, traffic making a left turn from 117 onto Watkins Mill is becoming very challenging. At the very least, I think a state highway could consider a different sort of signal at that intersection. Right now, there's no separate left turn signal. And with the volume of traffic in both directions, making a left turn is no small feat, and only a few cars at a time can get through on any light signal at this point. And it stacks up quite far down the road. In addition, aside from motor vehicle improvements on that section of road, bike ped improvements would be greatly appreciated. I have been riding my e-bike around town for the last 5 or 6 years now. And I'll tell you, the sidewalks around that section are more hilly and twisty and narrower than some of the mountain bike trails around the area. So I think ADA compliance is probably non-existent in that stretch. So improving the bicycle and pedestrian accesses in that area, and it's quite challenging to cross those intersections in general on foot or on a bicycle. So we would hope to see phases 2 and 3 back in the planning stage and see what can be done to make some improvements there. Now, speaking of the potential bus O&M facility at Metropolitan Grove, we have some concerns over the footprint of that plan, which would include taking some land from a city park facility nearby. We'd hope to be at the table with State Highway and the county to discuss whatever options might be for that facility and what can be done to mitigate any impact. We would like to see the CCT and BRT go forward. We would like to have a seat at that table as well. So far, some of those discussions have taken place without our involvement. We have been a good partner with the county, and some of the discussions of what the 355 BRT would look like coming through the Gaithersburg section. But as plans progress, we are ready, willing, and able and eager to be part of that discussion. And I'd like to touch on the 270 plan. As you're probably aware, we're pretty positive about the project. We would like to see more movement on the northern portion from 370 north to Frederick. I think it's very clear from the recent analysis that in the southern portion, traffic going south where it will connect to the expanded beltway that has been performed in Virginia gains greatly in terms of reducing travel time and reduced congestion in the morning rush hour. But coming north, when you come north and you get to 370 before any expansion has taken place, you don't really see a significant gain because you hit that bottleneck. So we would really like to see the northern portion, which is much more contained in Gaithersburg than the southern portion as well. So again, we would like to make sure we have a seat at the table to optimize the footprint of that and the performance of that from a Gaithersburg point of view. Finally, I'm going to go off script a touch. We sent a letter with most of these concerns, and I think you and many of the people viewing tonight have seen more details, but I'd like to point out that we've had many discussions, and I've talked to many of you folks directly about, this mode or that mode and what's the best way to make transportation work better for the various citizens that we have. But I think the bottom line is there's not enough funding to go around to really make things work. I've had some discussions with some of members of the state delegation about the fact that gasoline tax revenue is diminishing as time goes by, as automobiles become more fuel efficient, and as electrification of vehicles becomes more prominent. So we need other sources of funding. I know we have a bit of a bonanza coming from the federal government in the next couple of years, but on an ongoing basis, we really need to rethink that. And I'd like to point out, for the benefit of the folks here who aren't aware of it, Northern Virginia has created a special funding mechanism that generates $300 million a year that is lockboxed and solely dedicated to improving transportation in the Northern Virginia region. I would love to see some sort of similar program in this region so that we can continue to move forward on a lot of these plans. I mean, one of the reasons I brought that up is that somebody mentioned, several people, I guess, mentioned the Corridor Forward plan, which has many really forward-looking projects in it. However, they're also really expensive projects. I would estimate somewhere between $5 and $10 billion, and probably more like on the high side of that estimate. We need to come up with a funding mechanism other than hoping that Uncle Sam writes a $10 billion check to us. So hopefully we can get some of this going through some innovative funding, and you folks in the state delegation hopefully can give that some thought. And if you have any questions about how it works in Northern Virginia, I'd be happy to give you the Cliff Notes, or you could look at the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority's website for all the details. So I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Harris. Let me just get one point of clarification. I missed the intersection that you were referring to at Clopper with that could have a relook at a signal with the left turn issue.
At Watkins Mill.
Watkins Mill, okay. Just a couple of points where absolutely I'll talk to the team about making sure you have a seat at the table on a lot of those, as well as the Metropolitan Grove station there. On the e-bikes issue, I just will take a second and touch on that, because we've seen a huge growth in the use of e-bikes across the state in a lot of our areas. And it's not just the urbanized areas. So Holly's probably going to shock me, but we're working pretty hard on trying to figure out how to add e-bikes to the MARC train cars that we've added. So we've added some bike cars for MARC trains, but we're trying to find a way to be able to allow e-bikes on there. So we're seeing a lot of emergence of e-bikes. So somebody that can kind of get on one of those bikes and go in and get on the MARC train and have a nice safe trip. So, but thank you, and we're happy to continue to work with you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Councilman Harris. The county executive was able to rejoin us, so we'll let him pick up where he left off. If that's all right.
Yeah, I've had a bit of adventure, but thank your staff for getting me back in here. So I want to go on to the next thing I was talking about, which is state highway investments. And this is a place, I think I shared Neil's feelings that, we're really disappointed at the minimal level of investment in capital in the county. There's not much change from this previous CTP. We've got our number one in our priority letters has been for advancing Montgomery Hills Forest Glen improvements. We've advocated for a state study on implementation to fully protect the pedestrian crossing. I would be interested in an interim solution of giving us a four-way stop there with no turns on red, so the pedestrians could actually safely cross and not have to worry about being picked off by cars making right turns on red, and allow people to do the, what do they call it, the cattle crossing through the middle, which would help people not have to make two crossings if they're coming from the northeast side of the road. We'd also like support for the improvements at 117 in Gaithersburg and get it restarted now that the Watkins Mill interchange is open. It makes sense maybe to have not done them before, but now that interchange is open, it's time to move forward for it. And we continue to look for improvements on 198 in Burtonsville. And I think you must know by now, there's a lot of consternation about some of the design elements of that project with the local businesses there. It didn't get us where we wanted to go in terms of community acceptance. So I hope we can do some more work on it. Like I said, I'm relieved that we're moving forward on the Purple Line. And I'm hoping that the new private partners are able to take especially close attention to the neighborhoods, both the commercial and the residential, because they've been really impacted now for far longer than anybody should be. And we should figure out how we do this as expeditiously as possible. We'd like to, and I'm sure you share this, is to get a greater oversight of WMATA and the safety of their facilities in WMATA. That is a real concern. This latest episode with the 7000 series rail cars, you and I have talked about it. We have to make sure that we get everything right on this car now. If there are issues, there's no reason to assume this is the only issue. And I know that, the teams are going to look at these vehicles really, really closely. And we'd like to work with you and WMATA on developing a transit fare equity program that can serve our residents better and serve as a platform throughout the region. All of us have people for whom transit is not a problem to afford, and all of us have people for whom transit takes a huge chunk out of their available incomes. And we think it's time to move forward with a more equitable approach. I've seen this in other countries where the fares are adjusted to the incomes of the people who live there and use the system. Some systems look at employers to pay for a larger share of the cost, since it's basically ferrying their employees to work. So either way, we think we should be able to make progress on this, and we'd like to work with you on that. We think it obviously has implications beyond Montgomery County in terms of fare equity. We need more money to modernize our transportation infrastructure. And again, I'll agree with Neil. There's a lot more to do than there is money to do it. And I think that's one of the great frustrations with what happened with the funding from the state, is that it's not adequate to address the myriad of needs. And while you've increased the funding, inflation is likely to eat all of that. I mean, $1 billion more on a $16 billion budget or whatever, with the inflation you're experiencing, is probably a same services budget. I know if it was my budget and I had to build in these cost increases, it's pretty much same services, and that leaves a lot undone. So the county, we're making a major effort to broadly expand our life sciences. We know that, JLL, which has been working with WMATA, has identified, White Flint as a place that's a logical place to extend our life sciences industry. We're already getting people coming into White Flint and starting to build life science projects. So this is a place where, expanding that infrastructure is going to be really critical. And, I had a good conversation with the governor where I pointed out that, over 10 or 15 years with the 11 million square feet we can put there, we could do another Amazon-sized project. And we could do it with high-value companies that are going to bring a lot of attention, not just to Montgomery County, but to the state of Maryland. And we think it's a boost for everybody. It's a boost for the investment that's been made in NIH. And we'd like the state to start looking at this corridor in a way that recognizes the need for, real improvements there. The road system there, you knew when you did Amazon, the road system wasn't nearly adequate to support the development that Amazon would have brought. So I can just say that if we're successful, we're going to face that same hurdle in this corridor. So we could definitely use support for that. And lastly, just on the Opportunities Lane project, they're very limited opportunities. The studies kind of show that some people benefit and other people not so much. I do hope that you can take a pause and ponder the possibility of asking the federal government for money. Between that and the state surplus, surpluses are not good things to build ongoing operational costs with. I wouldn't expand my services based on a surplus in 1 year, but surpluses are really good for investing in capital projects. And I know for years we've been told the state doesn't have any money, lower your expectations. But we've arrived at a point where the state has money, more so than in a long time. And you've got a federal government that is prioritizing these projects. We know that the president referenced improving a bridge between Kentucky and Ohio near Cincinnati as the type of project to be funded. We think American Legion Bridge, like the Woodrow Wilson Bridge before it, should be a candidate for a decent chunk of federal money. And even if it doesn't get you out of needing tolls to some extent, it would certainly reduce the impact of those tolls on Maryland residents. And I'm not just talking about county residents, but it's the residents who are coming down from Frederick and beyond. So I would hope that the state would look at this now that it's real, it's not vaporware, it's passed, the money is going to be there. So please consider taking advantage of it and using it. And finally, I think we missed a great opportunity not to consider rail expansion in this corridor. There are so many people coming in from Western Maryland who are trying to get to downtown DC or to Northern Virginia or to places in our county. And being able to get that third track on there so we could run bidirectional service and make it actually function like a true rail system, I think would actually provide great relief for the folks who are on 270 today. So we encourage you to look at a wealth of projects and to take advantage of an administration that is interested in investment and know that you're going to have the support of, this is going to be bipartisan. This is not a Democrat Republican thing. Infrastructure improvements ought to cross party lines, and we would happily go to down to DC with the governor and advocate for more funds for projects in the state of Maryland. We all benefit from this, and I'll end there. But again, thank you very much for all the work you've done. And again, thank my senators and delegates for everything you've done over the years to support Montgomery County.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Just one thing I missed, a four-way stop with the Barnes Dance and the cattle crossing. Which location was that?
To Georgia and Forest Glen, because the reason we're building this tunnel is the great sense of peril that people experience there. And those right turns on red on a heavily used road are a problem. And if we could take them out until we build the tunnel, at least people would get a modicum of relief in the meantime.
Let us take a look at that. Just a couple of quick points. The super talented Samantha next to me reminded me that when we did the IAPA on Watkins Mill, that intersection on 117 was kind of borderline in operations. So that's coming up a lot. I think that's something we really need to make sure that we take a look at hard. Montgomery Hills is something we're really kind of looking at hard as well. The utility section is kind of the next piece. We're trying to figure out kind of how you can flow utilities and then flow the construction kind of simultaneously. But I can assure you, and I can assure everyone on this call, that not only is that one of my favorite projects, I think it's a great example of the kind of projects that we need to be doing across a lot of our arterials in this state. So we're looking at that one really hard. The opportunities that came with the infrastructure bill were not here 2 weeks ago. So, what kind of opportunities that we have, but I'm happy to continue to work collaboratively on all those priorities.
I've known you a long time, and I have a lot of respect for the work you do and how you go about doing it.
Mr. County Executive, now that we've got the undercard out of the way, it's time for the main event, which is going to do with the legislative districts. By popular demand of those with higher numbers, we're going to start with D39. I believe the two D39 representatives who signed up were Senator Nancy King and Delegate Resnick. So I will turn it over to the two of you.
I would defer to my senator if she wants to go first.
She might not be on, Krill.
Oh, well, that saves some time. Sounds good. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary Slater and your team for being here. Just two comments. The first one is one comment and a question. The comment refers to Clopper Mill. I know it's been referenced many times here. I'm glad to see that we're talking about it again. I have made multiple inquiries to the Department of Transportation across multiple administrations to see improvements on Clopper Mill. I would just emphasize that in addition to taking care of what was originally conceived of west of Long Draft, and now with the Watkins Mill interchange being in place, that we also look east of Long Draft, all the way to Great Seneca Highway. I know that it's complicated. I know that there are, we have a state park and we have Great Seneca Creek to deal with. But if we continue to expand west of Long Draft, there's going to continue to be a massive bottleneck. It drops down to one lane in each direction past Long Draft, and it's going to create an even worse bottleneck than it is now. And so we do have to look at that and figure out a solution that goes all the way to Great Seneca Highway, because otherwise I worry that all the improvements that you will do will go to naught. The second part that I have, and this is more of a question, deals with transit. As you are well aware, we have been talking about the CCT, and it has also been referenced here tonight multiple times, for decades. And several years ago, the governor took the CCT completely off, not only defunded it, but took the CCT completely off the CTP plan. It is now back on there. I don't know if there's any funding in it this year. So my first question has to do with whether or not there's actually any funding. But my concern and the question that I have, in addition to the funding, and I see you were shaking your head no, so that kind of answers it, is what the timeline on that looks like. Because if we are waiting for revenue from the 270 toll lanes, which won't open for 6 years, assuming contracts are signed, or at least phase 1 south won't open for 6 years, assuming contracts are even signed next year, assuming that the transportation commitment stays in those contracts, we're not going to see a viable CCT optimistically until 2035. And as Councilman Hucker referenced, we are losing billions of dollars of investment every year that we wait for the CCT to be built. So what is the point of waiting 15 years from now, as we have been waiting all this time, for the CCT to finally get underway? We need to see that investment now. It is a benefit to Montgomery County. It is a benefit to Up County. It's a benefit to Montgomery County. It's a benefit to Maryland as a whole. And for us to sit here and wait and potentially even lose out that revenue to another BRT line somewhere else, I would rather we commit to the CCT now, get funding from whether it's the federal infrastructure plan or some other way into the CCT now, so we can focus revenue from the 270 tolls, assuming that actually happens in the way that you are anticipating, on the 355 BRT line or some other mass transit line. So can you give me a realistic timeline for the CCT that is not going to make my head explode?
Sure. Thank you, Delegate, for your comments. Let me first kind of touch on Copper Mill. I know you've spoken to me many times about that. I remember shortly after I became secretary, I think it was one of the first conversations we had walking down the sidewalk in Annapolis. So we're going to kind of focus on that one and see if we can really get a better understanding of how we can really improve that section. Touching on the CCT, so I think the question would be that you really raise a really important question for us. And I don't necessarily disagree with you in terms of, I think there are some things that we could do now. There have been, as the CTT has kind of sat, now it's back in the program. There is no funding in it today, but I think there are some unknowns with the CCT or some questions with the CCT that we have to resolve. And I think there could be a good collaborative planning working group that there's no reason to wait for to kind of resolve those. And so there have been some suggestions on different alignments or different tweaks to the CCT, how it could combine with 355 and how there's connectivity there. But I think I'd love to be able to answer those questions kind of before diving in, because I think what we want to do is make sure that we're really investing in that, getting that solid planning and engineering shovel ready, so that when those opportunities like this infrastructure bill are out there, we're able to capitalize on them. But I don't see any reason why we couldn't collaboratively work on something like that now. I can't, unfortunately, give you a definitive answer on kind of when the construction is going to be there, because it's going to come down to opportunity and where it is and how much progress we can make. But I'm happy to work with you. I love that project as well. I think it's a great project across the whole county and really for the region. And I think it's a really transformational project when you think about where it fits with the entire network on the BRT network. But I'm happy to continue to work with you on that. And I wish I could give you a better answer on we'll have funding on X date or this date. But I think there's just a lot of unknowns. I think it's really about creating opportunity for that right now and making sure that we have kind of pencils down on what that looks like.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And I will say that is, with no disrespect, a very disappointing answer, because we have seen the same questions on alignment and all these other things that we have been discussing with the county and the state, even before the governor initially canceled the project off the CTP. The county came forward with new alignments before the governor canceled the project off the CTP. So the idea that we still haven't even resolved those issues gives me no hope that the Hogan administration has any commitment to the CCT. I know there's a lot of acronyms. I apologize. Senator Kagan, I apologize. So, I mean, I don't, at this point, what you're telling me is talk to the next governor. Is that fairly accurate?
No, I think what I'm telling you is I think we need to really get together and actively resolve those issues once and for all. We got to the end of a planning process, and I think we had felt like we were comfortable with an alignment, and then there were some questions raised with portions of that alignment, and then the corridor forward plan came forward. I think we really need to nail down kind of that moving target and be able to lay out that plan moving forward. I think some of the pieces in the infrastructure bill that are really interesting and not a lot of people are talking about is some of the opportunities that come with infrastructure financing with something like TIFIA. I'm sorry, Senator Kagan, where you can finance things at a longer rate. So for instance, some of that infrastructure funding, low and no interest infrastructure funding, was previously like a 50-year type of a thing, but now you're looking at it at more of a life cycle, and you can kind of spread those out to up to 75 years. That makes some projects that may not have been affordable today maybe affordable if you think about it from an infrastructure financing perspective, because you make that investment and it does unlock that economic opportunity. So, I think really, and I recognize it's probably not the answer that you want, but I do think we need to resolve those issues once and for all on the alignment. I don't know whether Holly had anything she wanted to add, but I think just resolving those issues, I think, is really important.
No, I think you've nailed it, and we're happy to sit down with the county and advance it. You know, we've done some work over the past couple of years on financing and some financing options that are available on the CCT website, and I'm happy to continue those conversations.
Great, thank you. Let me just offer a little budget perspective, which is, when the CTP comes down in January in final form, not seeing all zeros on the Quarter Cities Transitway page might be a sign of good faith that you guys are serious about moving the project, since everything you just described costs money. Why don't we move on to District 20, unless Senator King has arrived. I don't think she has. Delegate Charkoudian and the newly minted Vice Chair Moon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks everyone for being here. In District 20, we are the greater Silver Spring Tacoma Park area. So I am also speaking for Senator Will Smith and Delegate Janelle Wilkins, who couldn't make it tonight. But our perspectives are fairly aligned on what I'm about to say. We represent a lot of transit-dependent residents who access MARC Rail, will access the Purple Line Light Rail, Flash Bus Rapid Transit, WMATA, Ride-On, Capital Bike Share, Greyhound, and of course their feet with wheelchairs, walkers, and the like. So I want to just address two major projects quickly. The Purple Line. First, thank you for your partnership on grant funding in coordination with Commerce and Montgomery County. And we want to continue coordinating on this to move funds as quickly as possible. I know Senator Smith and Delegate Wilkins worked particularly hard on this. But in the interim, we also ask that the construction impacts be communicated clearly and regularly with businesses, especially around closures. We know you've heard about some of those complaints, and we'd like to head them off from the get-go. Likewise, with temporary mitigation, signs, striping, curbs, to maintain pedestrian access, we've had ongoing issues with that. The Delegate Charkoudian has been particularly aggressive at chasing down. With a new contractor selected, and we're glad to see that take forward, we're really hoping that those days of complaint-driven safety enhancements are behind us, and that it will be done built in from the get-go. On the highway widening 495 and I-270, I want to reiterate our collective opposition to this planned expansion. I know it's been recently stated that our corner of the world, the eastern segment of the Beltway, may return for conversation in 6 years or so. We prefer that not happen and this idea not be revisited. Lastly, I just want to 100% second the funding calls for Vision Zero priorities, medians, sidewalks, pedestrian refuge, bike lanes, crosswalks, beacon and hawk signals. We need them in every corner of my district. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Delegate Moon. Maybe a question for you, could be a question kind of offline to think about of the group is, as we're kind of getting the Purple Line kind of geared back up, we're looking at kind of stakeholder groups and business groups, and we have the existing groups, but it might be helpful to think about more of a business focused kind of roundtable group that we kind of talk to on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, those types of things. But I'd love your kind of thoughts and feedback on that. Certainly offline, we can talk about that as well.
Thank you for that. I'll take the second half of the District 20 priorities. So I want to highlight just a few things. I am going to start by talking about the Montgomery Hills Georgia Avenue project. And thank you, Secretary Slater, for all of your comments over the years about how much you like this project. And it's good to see that it is a county priority. I remain concerned that too many things continue to slip through the cracks, slowing the project down, and I worry about it not actually meeting the opportunities that we expect to have over the next several years. So you and I have been talking for 3 years now about how do we get this so that it can be shovel ready. This project that really has been talked about for 30 years, to Delegate Resnick's concern about the CCTP. This project has been talked about for 30 years, actively sort of in the conversation, maybe for 10. And in the time that I've been working on it over the last 3 years, I've really seen how easy it is for things to slip, for us to miss, for the SHA office to miss a deadline with planning, for a conversation, planning, giving feedback for a year, SHA not incorporating that. And then there we are when it should have been just a pro forma process through the mandated referral process, and instead we're slowing the process down further. So I want to get into all the details now, except I do want to publicly say I have a serious concern that it can slip through the cracks, continue to slip through the cracks, and that we'll miss out because it won't be shovel ready, over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, when we expect the federal money for shovel ready projects to come. So I want to really put that front and center. I take you at your word that you really want this project to happen. And I continue to be nervous about how little slips here and there may make us miss out on, millions of federal dollars that could be coming in this direction. So I hope we can keep that going. Related to that, we had been under the impression, we started the conversation that in the short term, at the very least, we could lower the speed limit on Georgia Avenue. We've been having that conversation more recently. A 4-year-old was killed sort of just north of this project area. And again, I think it was our understanding that that was doable. It sort of seems to, that conversation about lowering the speed limit as an interim solution seems to have been slowed down. It's not clear to me what the holdup is now. I'm continuing to talk to SHA staff about it, but I just sort of also wanted to put that on your radar as it relates to sort of the immediate things that can be done in terms of safety in that area. The next sort of project in the CTP that I wanted to mention is the project that is Route 29 that includes Stuart Lane, Tech Road, Greencastle, Blackburn Road. And so Stuart Lane is another intersection that, I heard about when I was campaigning 4 years ago. I talked to Councilmember Hucker. I understand it's been in the conversation for 10, 15 years. It's generally a horrible intersection, but in particular, it's really dangerous for pedestrians. And so there's this game that I think we get to play where, if we don't put a crosswalk down, and there's no crosswalk anywhere within a 2-mile radius, but we don't put a crosswalk there, we can pretend that it's not designed for pedestrians. But the reality is pedestrians, it's a transit dependent community. There's a senior center, there's a rec department, there's bus routes, there's a child care. And so you go there, you stand there and you see, a mother with a toddler and a baby in a stroller racing across, trying to make it across that intersection. So I appreciate that. I think the red light has been extended by 10 seconds to allow for what is essentially a not safe crossing, because there's no crosswalk there. But as people dash across, they got 10 more seconds to give it a shot, which I do appreciate. But I really would strongly urge you to see what can be done as soon as possible on the pedestrian safety side, even while the rest of the intersection is addressed as the longer term things that need to be done just to make it a less confusing intersection all the way around. So those are two of the things that are listed specifically in the CTP. And then the other issue I want to talk about more generally is related to the system preservation minor projects budget. And as I understand it from conversations, and I appreciate the number of conversations that Administrator Smith has had with me about this, and as well as many of his staff. But as I understand it, the time that we spend walking around with the District 3 staff and with various staff within SHA, pointing out the really dangerous intersections and corridors in our district, what happens is we identify we need a hawk signal here, we need a signalized crossing here, we need a wider sidewalk here, and over the last 3 years we've identified multiple, the list is, there's probably about 15 things on that list. And some of them have been denied by SHA, like the study's been done and it's been determined that you aren't going to move forward with it. But many of them have been accepted. So they're on a list somewhere to be constructed. And but in the time that we have put things on a list that are on a list waiting for the budget, people have been killed in those very same intersections. And that is devastating. We have stood at an intersection with your staff and everyone has agreed we need to fix this intersection, and it's waiting somewhere in a line. I have never quite gotten a clear understanding of exactly what that process looks like. And then someone gets killed there. And so then we're back in that same intersection now for a memorial. It's unconscionable. And so as I understand it from my conversations with Secretary Smith, and I'm not going to go through all of the intersections that I'm referring to, but the broader idea is that the items, ADA retrofit, bicycle retrofit, safety and spot improvements, sidewalks, traffic management, some of those items that are here under system preservation, which look like they have a lower 2022 budget number, a relatively low 23 budget number. Some of them go up in 25 and 26, but these seem like really crucial areas. If I understand it, this is where, when we find those places where relatively, in the scheme of things, a hawk signal, a relatively minor investment could save lives, and they have to wait 5 years. It just seems like this is a place where there would be a bang for the buck, in addition to the broader corridor investment that's necessary. And I hope that this will be, some of the federal money will go into these areas. That is my hope. I do, as you know, have legislation to require increased funding in these areas, as well as a more coordinated effort on the responding to areas with high fatalities. You probably know that we have lots of intersections where people continue to be killed, and then there's not a response that actually resolves the intersection. So I'll stop there. I'm interested in your thoughts on all of that.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. They're all really, really critically important. A couple of kind of thoughts there. I wasn't aware of the kind of slip or missed opportunity on Montgomery Hills, but I'm happy to engage in that and see if there's something that happened that maybe I could help with. But we're really focused on kind of how we move forward and kind of get that done. But I'm going to make sure that I have my eyes on that one as well. I have one question for you on kind of the 29 piece. So just some history on 29. So I want to understand whether you're talking about Stuart, Greencastle, or both from a pedestrian standpoint, or one that you would see kind of an issue and maybe not another. I'm just not sure whether you were talking about both. So I'd love to kind of hear your perspective on that. But, I think one of the challenges that we have with 29 is, one of these issues we have across the state where, there was a pretty significant planning effort and design effort on some of the interchanges along 29. And lots of things have changed since then. The whole character of that corridor has completely changed. So unfortunately, the designs that we have that kind of are sitting on the shelf are not really designs that are helpful for 29. They're basically grade separations designed to kind of move up and down the corridor. And they don't incorporate space for BRT. They don't incorporate a lot of the pedestrian and bike improvements that we need. So as we move forward on what we can do today on those types of intersections, I also think we need to kind of work and figure out what the longer term solution looks like on those intersections as well, and see how we can maybe update what we have on the shelf to be more in line with how that corridor has developed. But I'd love to kind of work on that with you as well. I can tell you, I'd like to see if Tim wanted to add anything from his perspective, but I can tell you that he and I have talked over the last couple of weeks about a couple of different things. One of which is we both agree with you that there is a need for additional funding in a lot of those areas. But we also are working behind the scenes on how to build some greater flexibility in those funding options to be able to move a little bit quicker and be able to get those things out there. We have to do a certain amount of kind of due diligence and engineering and study before we kind of move forward. But just being able to move forward quickly on some of those is important to both of us. But I don't know if Tim, you want to add anything on that one as well, because I know it's something we've talked about a lot.
Absolutely. So we are shifting focus and putting more additional dollars into those kind of for vulnerable users type improvements. But to specifically talk about Stuart Lane, I know we added, like you mentioned, we added additional timing, but we are also, we'll be making, there's utility challenges with that one, but we're going to be making some additional improvements next construction season with that. But overall, we have greater, as you kind of highlighted, we have greater safety needs than we did resources. And by Greg and, we've talked about it, we are shifting additional system preservation resources specifically for Vision Zero and our vulnerable user efforts. And what we're trying to look at this is also statewide as well. And that's a big part what, Chrissy, Administrator Nizer, as well as Secretary Slater mentioned. We're looking at all of the data across the entire state. And that's part of our context guide, as well as our pedestrian safety action plan that's going to be, we're rolling out. And actually, we're going to have a public forum on that in December. So what we're trying to do is we gather data. We also, in the spring, if you remember correctly, we asked input from everyone in the public to kind of use our map to look at our state and figure and pinpoint where you have concerns. Because what we're trying to look is not only our data, but look beyond the data and gather feedback from our citizens and concerned advocates and put that all together. And that's the plan for our next public meeting, is to share where we feel like we have our concern areas, and then put plans towards that. So it's going to be more of a systemic kind of corridor approach rather than trying to identify each location, but try to put some of those together at one time. And like I said, as I've shared with you, Delegate Charkunian, when we see an issue, I don't want to wait 2 years for it to go through the utilities, the right-of-way acquisition and design and construction. What we can do operationally immediately is make those, whether it's with pavement markings, delineator sticks, or make adjustments with signals, try to improve it as much as we can until we can get a more geometric, a larger capital improvement fix in there.
Yeah, thank you. And I welcome that. I think, as you know, Administrator Smith, I don't think that that's kind of generally been the practice, as you and I have discussed, but I do welcome and am including in my legislation a requirement that that be the case. And to answer your question, Secretary Slater, I was pointing out that I was at SHA M8, which includes Greencastle, but Greencastle is in District 14. So I am not as familiar. The intersection I know well is Stuart Lane, and that's the one I was speaking to. And my colleagues in District 14 can speak to the needs in that part of the district. So
I think I saw Councilman Hucker hold up a 2, so I think he was talking about both of them when I was asking the question. So
I'd say both. I'd be surprised if District 14 disagrees.
Absolutely. We're happy to look at both. And then just the last thing I'll touch on is
Kaiser's here, though.
the speed limit conversation is one that I'm very focused on as well. So I'm happy to look at that one in any area and see where we can make some opportunities, because I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunities with really focusing on appropriate speed limits to try and slow some things down. It does involve a couple of other things. One, ideally, kind of engineering practices to kind of slow the roadway down a little bit as well. And then following up from an enforcement perspective to kind of help supplement that and kind of change that behavior. But speed limits are a critical issue for us right now.
thank you.
Great. We'll move on to District 19, Chair Kramer and Delegate Cullison. I think Delegate Crutchfield is on as well, though I don't think she asked to speak.
I believe Delegate Cullison may have a question, so I will just yield to her if she does, and if not, we can keep on getting on.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to just ask this quick question. I think it is a quick question for District 19. We are very supportive of making more opportunities for cyclists in District 19. However, we had an issue, we have some concerns raised by one of our communities around the way that a section of University Boulevard was cordoned off basically with pylons to do a pilot study of cyclists having availability there. We hear from the community that there was no community input, there was no community warning, that they woke up one day and there was a sign saying, this is a pilot program, we want to see how this works. There are continuing issues around visibility for cars that are making a right onto University out of Arcola. So, and the folks that I've spoken with who are cyclists say, well, the way it's set up right now, they wouldn't use it because it's so unsafe, because the pylons don't stop cars from going over into those lanes. So I guess I'm wondering, what have we learned from the pilot and what are the plans for this section? And it's also a very short section of road. So how useful is it ultimately? Does it does it really get anybody anywhere? So those are my questions.
Sure, absolutely. Happy to touch on this, and then I may lean on Administrator Smith to kind of fill in the gaps for me. But that was a pilot that we did. We felt like it was a pretty successful pilot, and so we're trying to kind of work through that. I am hearing about the pilot itself from both sides of the issue. So, I'm contacted last couple of days every day from drivers that are going through there that are not in favor of the bike lane, but I'm also being contacted by a tremendous amount of cyclists who really are supportive of that. So, we're not in a position that we're going to take it up at this point. We're going to keep that pilot there. But what we'd like to do is create some public engagement so that we can really get a lot of feedback before we make a final decision on that. The one concern that we have is those the sticks that are out there are not necessarily a permanent solution, and they're going to offer some challenges in winter. And so, if the pilot kind of goes extending through winter, we're going to have to engage maybe either at a local level or even Maryland National to see if they can help us. We don't have snow equipment to get into kind of the smaller spaces like that. So, how we can kind of work in partnership with that, but as well as the construction of the sticks that were there and how much they'll hold up through kind of a rough winter, those types of things. I'm always optimistic that we're not going to have a rough winter. I'm always hopeful we're not going to have a rough winter, but I think where we are right now on that pilot is we're not in a position to take it out, but we'd really like to get some in-depth public feedback and public involvement before we make a decision on whether we want to keep it there or not. I think what's important is that if we do make a decision that we're going to keep it there, those sticks there are not a permanent solution. We need to make something a little bit kind of better and safer for that. It's just really a matter of kind of taking advantage. Originally, it was taking advantage of the opportunity to decrease traffic as people were going through the pandemic and creating some opportunity with space. And we did that in partnership with not only the county, but with Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. But Tim, did I miss anything?
You captured it well. I guess just from the feedback standpoint, we wanted to make sure we got not only our bike advocates, but the local community and the residents there, like you mentioned, make sure we got their feedback and input, as well as commuters as well. So we want to get the full 360 view of who's been using that roadway and use that feedback in addition to the data we collected, both the amount of pedestrians, motorists, as well as bicyclists that use that roadway. Make sure we have all that data. And like Greg mentioned, it was set up as a pilot. It was a temporary measure. The adhesive we used for the delineator sticks is not expected to last all winter, especially if we get any kind of mixed precipitation. So that's the part we're going to reach out and not only reach out to the bike community, but also Montgomery County DOT on just opportunities on how we can. Because if we do close a bike lane, how do you close a bike lane? Normally, you can put up barrels and stop a car, but if you put up barrels, how are you going to stop a bike? They can maneuver around it. So there's some logistic and operational decisions that we need to partner with before making any final decisions.
So if I might just follow up, I think it was the lack of community engagement in advance of the pilot that I was really hearing about, and the fact that people want the opportunity now. So what I'm hearing you say is there's a commitment to really now engaging in how do we create something that works for the community. And so one question, and I also hear you say, if it's determined that this is a useful thing to be doing, there will be more security for the cyclists and pedestrians. So that's number one. So is there a plan to extend it further on University? Are we going to stick with the couple of blocks, or I think it's like 2/10, or I don't even think it's a half mile that exists now? Or is it going to just stay that limited amount of lane?
I think what we need to do is gather that feedback and also digest the data. We wanted to see what the impact was to congestion in the area as well. So that's to be determined, but we're working with our local community. We want to, back to the point, we need to engage all parties and make sure we get that feedback before making any final decisions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your work on this, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Coulson. We actually need those sticks on the Maryland 187 bike lanes, which have no protection. So send them our way when you're done with them. We can move on to District 18, which I believe is a full slate. Senator Waldstreicher, Delegate Carr, Delegate Shetty, and Delegate Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the introduction. And as you mentioned, the 4 members of the District 18 team are here together. We work as a team. We're united as friends, as colleagues, and as policymakers. So we've divided up a few issues related to District 18. And thank you, Mr. Secretary, for joining us this evening. My first question is about the bike lanes at Arcola on University Boulevard, which is Maryland 193, and wanted to hear about what feedback you have received related to those bike lanes and where we might be heading with that project.
Absolutely. This is the same talk we were just discussing with Delegate Cullison. So where we are is, we had a pilot there. We're not in a position to take that pilot up. We're hearing daily from both cyclists that are very supportive of keeping that bike lane there, but we're also hearing from some motorists that are not as supportive. I think what we'd like to do at this point is just keep the pilot where it is, but also create some opportunities for public engagement and be able to kind of get feedback from all the stakeholders, all the users, and determine kind of where we go from there. The one thing we have determined that if we do keep that in there, the solution that we have out there with the flex poles and this flex sticks is not necessarily a permanent solution. So we need to make something much safer and much more permanent in leaving that out there. So I think what you're going to see over the next couple of weeks is no change. That lane will stay in there. But what you'll see is some organized public involvement opportunities so that we can really thoughtfully collect some feedback from the community on that.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for that. And I apologize for the repetition. I had to step away to read my kids a bedtime story. Second question, and I did hear Delegate Sharkudian reference the accident, unfortunately, on Georgia Avenue that cost a 4-year-old girl her life. And I know the thoughts of the District 18 team go out to her family. I can't imagine what a tragedy it is for them. Of course, I have a daughter as well. And Mr. Secretary, I'm sure you feel the same way. And so I just wanted to understand preliminarily what you know to have happened there from Montgomery County Police and what your initial perspectives are on that stretch of Georgia Avenue. I know so often we talk about Georgia Avenue just south of there in Montgomery Hills, which has been discussed tonight, and just north of there in Wheaton. But that stretch itself hasn't gotten much attention. And I wanted to get your perspective on that stretch of Maryland 97.
Absolutely. Let me kind of touch on that stretch of 97 for a second, and then I'll touch on, I'll kind of push it over to Administrator Smith and see kind of he's got the latest and greatest in terms of what we're hearing from the police report and the issues there. But we feel those issues when they occur, and we feel those issues too frequently. I can tell you in this job, you get a lot of phone calls that make you want to just kind of take a walk and get some air. And those are those types of phone calls. My feeling on Georgia Avenue is pretty simple. Georgia Avenue needs to be safer for bicyclists and pedestrians, and the drivers on Georgia Avenue need to slow down. And so we need to work together to make that happen. And so that's how we're going to make Georgia Avenue safer. And that means really changing the look and feel and character of Georgia Avenue. Maybe more of a boulevard type of a feel, engineering to slow that traffic down, but also facilities, real facilities for cyclists and pedestrians to use that are protected and they can feel safe in using it, no matter what level of user you are in that. So someone can get out there and those kids that you read the bedtime story, you can feel safe kind of going out and taking a walk with them on Georgia Avenue. And that's really what we're trying to do. The first section that we've been focusing on is kind of that Montgomery Hills, really that's really south of the Forest Glen Metro Station. But those areas, that area really kind of emerged as a very complex section, mainly because of the Forest Glen Metro Station, the residential on one side, a lot of the features on the other. But that doesn't mean that the issues on Georgia Avenue are isolated just to that section. So, we're happy to continue to work with you, but maybe Tim can touch a little bit on maybe what we've seen or have not seen from the police report yet. I know I have not gotten the final one myself.
Yeah, so the that police reconstruction review is still underway, and we haven't gotten the final report yet. We do know that particular section of roadway, we have 3 lanes in each direction, and the individual was making a left-hand turn. But as the secretary mentioned, we feel each one of these. I get text every time we have an incident on our roadway, so I have that as well, and I have 3 boys at home myself. But with this particular one, we know we've made some improvements, but it's going to be, I agree, a collaborative effort with law enforcement and locals to kind of change the behavior there and use the engineering dollars we do have to make those improvements. But it's going to take everyone working on those 4 E's to make sure we improve it for everyone.
Thank you to you both. I'm heartened to hear your words tonight. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, just alphabetically here, Delegate Al Carr.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Secretary, and everyone for being here. I had 3 short questions about tolls. So I know that it's our policy to promote Easy Pass as the most efficient and the best way to collect the tolls. But I know there were some challenges with the intercounty connector, the ICC, with the vendor, where those transactions, Easy Pass transactions, were not processed in the normal way, where they are sent quickly to your Easy Pass account. Those had to be backlogged or held back, and I understand that those are going to be sent out over in the coming months so as not to overwhelm someone's credit card or Easy Pass account. But the question is, can someone who has an Easy Pass account, who travels on the ICC, who has these transactions that are backlogged, is there some way they can log in and view the totality of all their transactions, the ones that are, haven't been billed and are being held, so that they can get a better understanding of what they're eventually going to have to pay?
Absolutely. Let me touch on this, and then I may ask Executive Director Jim Ports to kind of jump in as well. But so the answer is yes in terms of facilities. So you can log onto the website and see what tolls you have currently due. I said that, but the caveat to that is we also have a backlog in processing those tolls. And so, if they have not gone through that backlog of the processing, they won't show up on the website. But you can log onto the website and see what tolls you have due that have been processed. I will tell you, we've had our challenges here, but we're not alone in this. I did a conference call, Jim and I did a conference call with about 4 or 5 other states and toll facilities over the last couple of weeks that are experiencing some similar backlogs and dealing with some similar challenges, but we're very focused on it, but continuing to work through that. But so if something's processed, they can log in. They're also welcome to pay right away. We're also offering discounts if they're able to kind of pay that with certain percentages off and those types of things. But Jim, did I miss anything?
Greg, you said it all very well, I have to admit it. So you're on it.
All right. And the second question is going off the ICC. So I have Easy Pass, and my family, we did a couple of trips up to New York City, one in September and one in October. And so we hit toll roads in a number of states: Maryland, Delaware, bridges between Delaware, New Jersey Turnpike, New Jersey to New York bridges, tunnels into Manhattan. And what I noticed was that for every other toll authority, those toll transactions would show up in a day or two. But for the Maryland ones, such as Fort McHenry Tunnel, I-95, JFK, the delay is like 2 weeks for that to show up in my account. Is there a plan? And it didn't used to be that way. They used to show up pretty quickly, within a day or two. Is there a plan to bring Maryland more in line with some of the other tolling authorities, where we're processing those Easy Pass transactions more quickly, so people can sort of get on with, paying them or getting them expensed with their job or, whatever they need to do?
There absolutely is. A lot of the toll facilities, without knowing kind of each specific one, but a lot of those toll facilities, especially the ones up and down the eastern seaboard into kind of New York, have been all electronic for quite some time. And so they're kind of a little bit more mature in the all electronic world on some of those facilities. At the end of the day, we ended up, when we got into the pandemic, moving to that all electronic tolling to reduce kind of the cash world and exposure to our toll collectors, and then moved into all electronic tolling probably about 2 years before we were quite ready. And that's kind of the pain that we're feeling in this transition. But absolutely, and we feel pretty confident that, as we come out of this what I'll call a painful backlog, and it is a painful backlog, as we come out of that and continue to make progress over the next several kind of weeks and months, we're going to be a better, more modern facility that's going to be on par with them. Jim, would you agree?
I do, Greg. I said the only thing I would add is the backlog is really twofold. So we were in the middle of a transition from a vendor we'd had for the last 15 years to a new vendor, two new vendors, right? And then as Secretary Slater just said, COVID, it all hit the same time, and we transitioned to all electronic tolling immediately at the flip of a switch. And so I think the combination between changing vendors and COVID all hitting at the same time created that perfect storm, which created an enormous backlog. And of course, the no good deed goes unpunished. Sometimes when we were trying to look out for some of our, let's call them more vulnerable people who may have lost their job or lost hours in their job due to COVID, we had paused some of the NOTDs. So each one of those decisions, and of course we thought COVID was going to take about 8 weeks, and it didn't, as we all know. And each one of those decisions helped create that backlog. So we're just trying to work through it with our vendor at this point. But once we get through this, then it should start running a lot more smoothly.
Just the final question is, we lost this ability to reclaim toll debts from the central collections that used to be in the law, but that was a sunset. So can you tell me, does MDTA plan to introduce a departmental bill to restore that ability?
Let me let Jim touch that one. I know it's something that he really has been working on with between budget management, but I think, we would love to regain that. We just don't know what the right opportunity will be for us.
That's fair. Yeah, I think, we've been in talks with DBM with negotiations, and of course, the filing of the bills goes through the governor's office. So we're not always at liberty to talk about those, but I know we've been asked by you, Delegate Fraser Hidalgo also brought it up when we spoke to his committee. And so I believe there's definitely could be some bills in this year on that.
Thank you.
I'll go next if you don't mind. Hi, Secretary Slater and team. Thank you so much for meeting with us this evening and providing really helpful updates on a variety of different projects and concerns across the county. The District 18 team, we meet quarterly, if not more frequently, with your team, and we're so appreciative of their really helpful, responsive information. They've been really wonderful partners, and we're really grateful for that. So my questions are focused on 2 areas. Initially, I was just going to focus on the Connecticut Avenue corridor of our district. But I'm going to also circle back really briefly with a question about Georgia Avenue as well, if you don't mind. So first on Connecticut Avenue. So this is an area that we've been really working super closely with your team on. Our communities there, we have several municipalities and other non-incorporated areas that are super interested in seeing movement on the improvement of Saul and Connecticut. Specifically, we really want to see a dedicated left turn light onto Saul, which we feel would mitigate some of the collisions and incidents that continue to occur at that site over the years. So we're hearing from your team that the project is in design now and that construction would occur after that. I'm wondering if you can share a specific timeline and when that construction could potentially begin.
Absolutely. Tim, I don't know if you or maybe Erica want to address. I think really what it comes down to is the design schedule and when that will be completed and permits in place. But maybe Tim, I don't know whether you have that information in front of you.
I do not have that but I'd be happy to follow back up and give you those details.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. And then separately, I know that the police department has been working with several of the municipalities along that corridor to conduct studies of the current speeds traveled so that they can then make a petition to SHA to allow that area to have automated speed cameras. So we've alerted your team that that is potentially coming soon. Is there anything else we can do to expedite the review of this once MCPD sends that petition your way?
I think just
go ahead, Tim.
I think just by highlighting it tonight, you've done your due
I've done my part.
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
Yep.
Thank you. Good to know. Okay, so then the last thing I want to circle back to is the conversation about Georgia Avenue. So the community there has expressed some frustration at the lack of both speed and red light cameras there. And they have felt that either or both of these could have prevented fatalities like the one that we just recently saw of the 4-year-old. So can you give me a little bit of information there about what's going on in terms of like where the impediment is? Has MCPD similarly requested approval for cameras here? Has SHA denied them? Where is the roadblock so that we can help try and facilitate some requests?
Absolutely. Let me kind of touch on this because I've been kind of looking at this issue myself as well. So just kind of, and I'll focus my conversation around Prince George's, Montgomery County, rather than kind of the statewide issue. So cameras are permitted in both Montgomery County and Prince George's County in kind of certain situations. So one, this is what's written into law. One, in designated school zones. And in those school zones, the cameras can operate from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., kind of Monday through Friday. And then in residential districts with a maximum speed limit of 35 miles an hour. And so in special situations over in Prince George's County, we can do some different things. One, part of a highway located within the grounds of like an institution of higher learning or something along that line. And then we do have some special authorizations on Maryland 210 associated with some portable ones. So when you think about like the capital area, we probably have 44 cameras currently in operation in Prince George's County, and we have 77 in operation in Montgomery County, fixed locations and portables. In Prince George's County, so we have a couple of them that are currently new and some of them are currently permitted. In Montgomery County, the police department is going to be installing cameras along Georgia Avenue at May Street and Rippling Brook Drive based on the recent speed study. So that's done. They're getting ready to install those. And then they're also evaluating the potential for speed cameras along 28 west of Georgia Avenue per some feedback from the community. So where are we right now? In Montgomery County, no permits have been denied. In Prince George's County, we had 2 that were denied in 2019, one in Marlboro because it was an issue kind of with the school zone and we were trying to figure that out. And then one on 704 over in Glen Arden. So as of right now, we have kind of a couple of that are pending that we've given approval to Montgomery County PD, and we don't have any that have been denied in Montgomery County.
Okay, so then to your knowledge, then just to be super clear, has MCPV performed any speed studies in this particular area of Forest Glen to begin the petition process for a speed camera there?
Not to my knowledge, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they haven't done it. So,
Okay.
you know, they may have gone out and done that speed study and they're gathering all their data and information before they come to us.
Okay.
But I also, I don't have visibility directly on a lot of that. So
Of course,
I don't know
yeah.
whether
We
Administrator
could follow
Smith.
up with them then, I guess, is the question, is the next step then to find out what's been done there. And then for red light cameras, they don't have to do the same type of study. They can just issue a request.
Correct. That's more of a that's more of an engineering kind of thing, isn't it, Tim, in terms of sight distance and those types of things?
Correct. And then just local law and law enforcement as well.
Okay, thank you. Super helpful. Appreciate it. I'll turn the floor to Delegate Solomon. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Shea. Secretary Slater, it's great to see you and your team. Thank you as always for being here. I did want to start off just by also thanking Administrator Nizer, who saved one of our constituents who had literally broken her leg 2 days before going on vacation and managed to pull a temporary handicap placard out of her hat, and really appreciated that. And to Administrator Arnold, who I think is here. The last time we spoke earlier this week, I didn't realize you had been made permanent. So congratulations on that as well. We've spent a lot of time over the last couple of months talking about Mark Rail, which I appreciate immensely. I wanted to just touch on a couple of local safety issues and then have some other bigger statewide priorities that we've been working on. I want to just reiterate what's been said on Montgomery Hills. You know, I think Delegate Charkoudian really laid it out well. Our District 18 and 20 teams have been working really closely on that as the project spans both of our districts, and appreciate Administrator Smith's role in that, and Mr. Secretary, your role in your prior position. I did want to highlight just a couple of again, local issues that we're still sort of waiting outstanding on. You know, we've talked a lot about improvements in the Wheaton Business District. We just got a letter back from the local team about the potential for a left turn off of University onto northbound Georgia, which spills onto Grandview Avenue and sort of creates a lot of local traffic issues back in the neighborhood. And so the left turn onto Georgia was denied. And so would really appreciate, you know, an intense look at the Grandview Avenue intersection, because if we can't make lefts onto Georgia, we need to do something about Grandview. And so would really appreciate your team working with us on a solution. And I know the Wheaton Business District would really appreciate that as well. I know your local team also participated in a town hall that we had earlier in the summer on safety issues along East-West Highway, particularly between Beach Drive and Connecticut Avenue. And I know there's sort of some longer term issues there, particularly with sidewalks that may cost a little bit more, but I think we've come up with some creative solutions for potentially some immediate safety improvements. And so would love, you know, to get a little further along on that, and potentially, you know, see some movement, you know, hit some singles instead of always hitting home runs, I think, as many of you are always talking about. And then we recently had a conversation about sidewalks on 192, which is Capitol View Ave, and to the points that have been made earlier, that in particular is, you know, just an incredibly unsafe stretch of road, but also has the opportunity to really connect a lot of our neighborhoods with, you know, the Forest Glen Metro, while also, you know, with the Purple Line. And I know, you know, it comes up sort of every time we talk about the Purple Line, but really, as we get back to construction and finalizing the actual completion of it, really looking at building out sidewalk infrastructure that goes along with the Purple Line, especially since those stations don't have parking and we don't want people driving there. You know, really making sure that there's neighborhood connectivity to be able to utilize those stations fully. And, you know, I appreciate my colleagues' comments on the bike lanes. I think we would love to see those extended on the westbound side, you know, maybe interconnected into Rock Creek, the Rock Creek network on the westbound side of University from Georgia. And so would love to, you know, continue working with you all. I think we have heard a lot of really positive feedback. So we want to make sure that we're addressing the community's concerns that might exist to keep those in place. And then I would also just second sort of what's been said, I think, by a couple of different folks about global pedestrian safety issues. And I would love to see Maryland embark on something similar. You know, the District of Columbia had a couple of really high profile fatalities that were also heartbreaking. And, you know, there's a commitment by Mayor Bowser to really move a backlog, I think, of between 60 and 100 sort of minor pedestrian safety projects that have been in the queue for a while. And, it's a shame that it took those fatalities, but I would love to see a commitment from, from our agency to do something similar. I think, we all have probably similar stories of beacons that are outstanding, or, minor intersection improvements that, are being held up or are in the queue. And so, if we can figure out how to get money in there and clear a lot of those things, I think that would be wonderful. I did just want to touch on a couple of issues for our district on the Purple Line. I appreciate the response on the Sleaford Road Tunnel that I know is important to both District 16 and District 18. I know Holly will laugh when she hears this. Obviously, I always have to mention the Talbot Avenue Bridge. With a new contracting firm coming on board, I hope that when construction begins, we can get that bridge and those communities reconnected as quickly as possible. And then I'll just touch on, appreciate all the work that your MTA team has done on implementing our MARC rail bill with run through into Delaware and Virginia. And just very appreciative of the work that the team has done on the Brunswick Master Plan, working with Delegate Corman and myself. So really excited to see that come to fruition and more work. I think, if we can position the MARC system to take advantage of the huge influx of federal dollars, we will see benefits for generations to come. And the last comment I'll make before just one quick question is I would also echo, I would like to see the comment period extended for the draft environmental impact statement. We won't get into any of the Beltway stuff, but I know a lot of folks in our community would really appreciate that as well. And then the one question that I did have is, we've talked about this a couple of iterations with different staff, but now that there is the new contractor on board, do you anticipate being able to keep the commitments of the previous contractor on potentially reopening the bike lane, or excuse me, the trail, the Capitol Crescent Trail bike trail before the actual Purple Line is operational? We had made some progress on that, and then things sort of got stalled with all the changes.
So let me kind of address that and then see if Matt or Holly kind of want to fill in some of the gaps, because I think what's really been important to me as I kind of came in the middle of the Purple Line challenges is making sure that we're keeping our commitments regardless of, because the people that we serve, they don't care whether we're switching contractors. They just want the Purple Line to run and they want us to maintain our commitments. So, the state making commitments is the state making commitments regardless of whether who the contractor is. So, we certainly are willing to stand by that. I'm not sure where that kind of fell. Matt's been living and breathing the new construction sequencing, and he may be able to kind of fill into some of those gaps, but absolutely a commitment that's made by the state is a commitment that's made by the state, regardless of who the contractor is. And we have to stand behind that. I would love to maybe follow up a little bit with you on kind of the pedestrian safety piece and kind of the backlog, and how we can really make a difference there. What I would ask as we kind of work through that is how we can kind of use data to drive some of those decisions, because we do have issues all over the state and all over the capital region. And some of the areas in Prince George's County are pretty significant as well. And so we want to make sure that we're kind of clearing that backlog as best we can in the areas where we're really seeing the most significant issues and where we can make the most significant difference, regardless of where they are and what county they are and what region they're in.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you on that. I mean, we have a couple of locations where, Senator Waldstreicher mentioned the Georgia Ave recent fatality, but Randolph and Connecticut, or I'm sorry, Beers Mill in Connecticut in particular, there have been a handful of fatalities over the last 5 years. We were just at a memorial service there a few weeks ago, and there have been some outstanding beacon improvements that are just ongoing as well as sort of a global reconstruction of that section. So that would be great.
I will, maybe I'm going to look at Administrator Nizer for 1 second, because I might get these numbers wrong. But, one of the things that we're seeing across the state is almost a 40% increase in speed-related fatalities and almost 30% when it comes to aggressive driving fatalities. So unfortunately, when traffic was down, people picked up some really, really bad habits. And there's some pretty aggressive driving that's happening out there today. Chrissy, did I get that right?
You did. And the other change of behavior that we're really seeing is a lot of impaired driving during earlier times. We're used to seeing impaired driving, after 8 o'clock at night. the number of impaired driving that we see, from 3 o'clock to 8 o'clock at night, essentially doubled during last year. So yes, we've seen a significant change in behavior during the pandemic, and we're trying to evolve our strategies, obviously, to meet those changes.
Delegate Solomon, was that it?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, District 18. We can now turn to District 17, starting with Senator Kagan.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I am going to kick it off to Chairman Barve to speak on behalf of the delegates, and then I'll follow up. Kumar?
Sounds great, Senator. Thank you very much. First of all, as the chair of the Environment and Transportation Committee, it's always been a pleasure to work with you, Mr. Secretary, and your leadership team. I want to specifically compliment the work that Jim Ports did, and as well as Ali Arnold very recently, as I've gotten to know her better, and of course Chrissy Nizer, who's always done a terrific job on behalf of the people of the state of Maryland, and all of them have been very useful to my committee and very informational. So as you know, well, you may not know, I have the pleasure of representing the people of Gaithersburg and Rockville, and it's very difficult to improve upon the words of the mayor of Rockville and council member Harris from Gaithersburg. But let me just touch on a couple of very large issues that are important to our constituents. And on behalf of myself, Delegate Gilchrist, Delegate Plotkovich-Carr, and of course, Senator Kagan as well, who will be speaking a little later on. Starting from north and moving south, I have to say that we share the city of Gaithersburg's concern with respect to Clopper Road and all the constellation of improvements that are needed around the Watkins Mill interchange. Specifically, you'll notice in the Gaithersburg letter, they mentioned that there's no funding for phase 2 for the intersection capacity improvements from I-270 in Metropolitan Grove, or for phase 3, Metropolitan Grove to west of Game Preserve Road. And as you know, we speak with one voice when it comes to really making the Watkins Mill interchange plan truly work for our constituents. But also, I have to emphasize that the Gaithersburg Germantown area is the biotechnology area of the county and to a great extent the state. And world-renowned companies like Novavax it's extremely important to them that these projects move forward as quickly as possible. And I have to say, Mr. Secretary, I'm very heartened to hear how positively you spoke about Route 117, the Clopper Road and other and the Diamond Road intersection area. So I'm very heartened to hear you say that. So thank you very much for those words on that. I'm not going to belabor the concerns that we have with respect to the P3 initiative and its impact upon the city of Rockville and our constituents who live in Rockville. I will mention that the governor himself, during his reelection, made a commitment not to adversely impact the city of Rockville by taking property. It's now clear that property is going to be taken, and as a courtesy to my constituents and to the people who live in the center of Montgomery County, we would want to know sooner rather than later what those impacts are with greater specificity. I think that I speak for all four of us, and I speak for the mayor and the council and the people of the city of Rockville when I say that. Our friends, our constituents in Gaithersburg and Rockville both appreciate and use the intercounty connector. Our Gaithersburg constituents access it through the Samog Highway, but a lot of my Rockville constituents access the intercounty connector by driving up Norbeck Road and turning left on Georgia Avenue. And I have to tell you, and it shouldn't be a mystery to you, that's a failing intersection in the mornings especially. I have a lot of constituents who have a lot of difficulty getting on the ICC, and that is something that we are going to have to dedicate more intense scrutiny to as the years go by. And then let me talk about something literally pedestrian, a pedestrian bicycle issue. First of all, thank you very much for the great work you've done in the city of Rockville under the guise of, I want to get the wording correct, because the context-driven guide where you did, MDOT did a lot of projects in the city of Rockville, and the one that comes to mind most recently is Route 355 and Park Road. We thank you for that. But what the city government and what we and our constituents would want to know is where the next context-driven type projects are going to occur throughout Montgomery County, and especially in Rockville and Gaithersburg. And so what we would love to see are timelines and plans for future projects, because pedestrian safety and bicycle safety it's as important to us as it is to anybody else. So that's something I would like for you to address. And then finally, and this is kind of a big picture thing that as chairman of the committee I've been thinking about, but it bears upon the people of Rockville and the people of Frederick and the people of Gaithersburg. That is really innovative proposals like the monorail proposal that had been put forward. I know that MDOT is in the process of studying it. Look, I mean, I personally agree with the city of Rockville and Gaithersburg. The main nexus of problem is really north of Gaithersburg and south of the city of Frederick. I'm not happy with the way the P3 arrangement kind of kicks that to the back of the priority schedule. I really think that's what should have been addressed first and foremost. But while we're addressing that, I think it's important to look beyond just road building. I think it's important for us to look to innovative solutions like the monorail. And so the three things I'd like you to respond to: the monorail, the backup on Norbeck Road and Georgia Avenue leading into the intercounty connector, and finally, we'd love to have a more detailed understanding of the context-driven guide projects that might take place for pedestrian safety and within the city, well, not just the city of Rockville, but Gaithersburg as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and always good to see you. Let me first touch on the monorail. So we did a study on the monorail, and we found it to be very feasible with the information that we had, very limited information, kind of high level. We looked at it and compared it to some of the other systems that are running across the globe and how that could work. And we had some positive results in that study. But then Maryland National Capital is also studying it alongside of some of their efforts as far as Carter Forward Plan, those types of things. But we are actively engaged with Mr. Einzinger and making sure that we have an open dialogue with him and some of the things that he's advancing. I think when it comes to a decision whether the monorail is the best solution for that corridor, I think there's a lot of folks that need to be involved in that decision and that discussion and kind of where that needs to be. But we're actively engaged with him at a technical level so that we make sure that we're not doing anything to kind of rule that out, or any other transit solution, whether it's light rail, heavy rail, or any other solution out there, to make sure that we're not ruling any of that out as we're looking at some other things.
Well, great. I and my committee and those of us who represent District 17 would like to be at that table of discussion.
Sure.
As well.
Absolutely. And then, one thing on the, I think you raise a really good point on, I'll put it in what I'll call the transparency category of kind of being able to predict when these projects are coming and kind of timelines. Sometimes the timelines are known and sometimes they're just kind of out beyond our means, but I think we could really probably do a better job at kind of laying out and putting it, what I'll say, in plain English. And so, it took me years to be able to read the CTP and kind of understand kind of between that and the long range plans and those types of things. But really, I think you've left me with a pretty good challenge here of kind of thinking through how we can better communicate the timelines as well as kind of what's in the CTP and the schedules and kind of timelines and when things are not funded and where they fit and where they sit in the priorities and those types of things. So let me work on that one a little bit.
Right.
But let me touch on the context driven. So your question was more about kind of what's the next context driven. It's my vision that every project we do should be context driven. And so, you know, a big part of that guide and a big part of what we saw the need for that guide was really driven by a lot of the challenges that we were seeing both from a safety and operational perspective on our system, where, you know, 5 years ago, State Highway was really looking at projects in two categories. You know, we had urban and rural. And so what we found in the context guide is there's really, you know, and that was maybe a result of somebody putting a planner like me in charge of SHA, but it was more of kind of looking at several different categories, whether you're a town center or really suburban, looking at all those different land use categories, and then having the right set of tools for that community. And so when you're just living in two sets of tools, urban versus rural, and you're dealing in some of those areas that are in those areas in between, you kind of pick one. And so a lot of times what I was finding was we were using the same tools on an urban arterial that we were using on a high-speed US route. And that doesn't work. And so we wanted to make sure that we laid out the context so that our planners and our engineers could first look at the context of the community, the makeup of the community, the land use aspects, and then make sure we have the right set of tools to be able to use in that community, and then work collaboratively to try and design that solution. So, you know, we're still in the early stages of the project, whether it's the context guide, and I still think we have a lot of work to do on it, but I think it's the right step in kind of getting a broader set of tools for State Highway. But we're happy to engage with you on that one continually, and let me work on the right way to communicate some of these kind of local priorities across the state, and how we can be more transparent about timelines that we know and timelines that we don't know.
Good. I don't only care about Gaithersburg and Rockville.
Sure.
Rockville access to the intercounty connector, do you want to comment on that?
Is this the one at Norbeck? So absolutely. So we were monitoring that intersection probably right after the opening of the ICC. It was starting to kind of fill up because you know, traffic is like water. They find the easiest way and they kind of work that way. And then that fell off a little bit because of the pandemic traffic, but I'm happy to re-engage on that intersection and work closely with our district and see how that's operating and see if there are some real short-term things that we can do to maybe make that a little bit operationally more palatable.
Okay, well, let me just conclude by saying these are not the only three things that I care about, and there are other issues that we're going to talk about. And again, I want to reemphasize, I'm very impressed, as are the members of my committee, with the professionalism and the courtesies that you and your leadership team have shown my committee. And so thank you for that. And with that, Senator, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Polakovich-Carr, do you want to add anything? Is there something that Delegate Barve omitted, or should I go?
No, he covered everything.
Okay, great. Thank you. Delegate Gilchrist couldn't be here this evening, but we all share our commitment. So Delegate Barve talked about us being the legislators for Gaithersburg and Rockville. I also often describe myself as up 270, up 355, up the Metro Red Line, the high-tech corridor. Like, we are really an infrastructure district. And with that in mind, and because this is a multimodal hearing, I'm going to engage with a bunch of modes, some questions and some comments. I want to outdo Delegate Solomon, my good friend, with Chrissy Niser's ability to use a magic wand and get a passport. Administrator Niser brought a dead constituent back to life. So I think that's pretty impressive, and was able to make sure that he did not lose Social Security benefits and all that by accidentally having him dead in the MVA records. So yay for her. Thank you. Charlie Scott is wonderful, but WMATA, the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, or Metro, I think we are all pretty concerned about the unexpected delays in the reconstruction and timetable in the safety improvements on the overhangs. We understood, we appreciated the buses, and Charlie has been wonderful and communicative, but really disappointing that it is not just a little delay before people can get on the red line at Shady Grove or from the south and go northbound, and then need to get off and take a bus and transfer and get off. So I had worked with Rockville Council member David Miles on getting assurances from Metro that there would be extra shuttle buses over Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving holiday, and that they would come really often. I had an image of people with suitcases and whole families and shuttle buses just being overloaded and people missing flights. So I'm going to say that again for the Christmas holidays, New Year's holidays, and all that, and depending on how long that's going to go. But I would ask on behalf of the four of us and the municipalities that we please be regularly updated on that, and I hope that we can move that forward. Next, I've already been messaging, but the new official MTA administrator, Ali Arnold. I've been surprised and frustrated by how terrible cell service is on the ICC, the Intercounty Connector. And it just seems to me when people are paying a premium to ride on a road, they ought to be able to return a phone call safely, hands-free, using Bluetooth and stuff, and not have constant missed phone calls. So to the degree that that can be investigated, I'm really interested in hearing that. Next, again, I've been Assistant Secretary Ports, Delegate Ports, always. I appreciate your attention to the website. I agree with Delegate Carr and the concerns, enormous delays. And I think that just makes it a lot less user-friendly. I was on the website recently doing exactly what Delegate Carr said, was trying to get some receipts for a reimbursement for a trip recently, and I had to call help. I had to call customer service because the website was so confusing. And I use websites every day, and I'm not that stupid, so I don't know why I found it so confusing, but I'm glad that Mr. Ports is working on that. I am tossing to you, Jim, for an update, please, on tolls. I continue to have concerns about the proposed Hogan widening of 270 with pricey tolls. Delegate Carr and I were two of the witnesses who testified about the pricey tolls, as well as the environmental impact. And now that we do have a federal infrastructure bill, and there's the possibility of federal funds, I am really worried about the enormous impact on the middle-class folks and those of us who are on restricted incomes, trying to alleviate and avoid traffic by using a lane that we're not going to be able to afford, and having the free lanes just be incredibly clogged. The ICC, as you've heard me say, Mr. Secretary, is a splurge for me when I take it, and these lanes would be more than twice as much potentially, and more than that. So I'd love an update on the timetable and status. I heard 19 cents a mile. I've heard they're always, and that doesn't sound like very much until you multiply the number of miles that constituents in Gaithersburg and beyond are going to be driving. And then the last thing, I think Delegate Barve did a great job, as did Councilmember Harris, Council President Hucker, and others, talking about Watkins Mill. And I just wanted to say that I don't think that Maryland can call itself open for business if we are talking about bringing hundreds and hundreds of jobs to companies like Novavax. We're talking about hundreds of new homeowners there. And yet we've got this beautiful new exit off of 270 at Watkins Mill, and we're grateful for that. But kind of like the bridge to nowhere, if they can get off the interchange and then get clogged in traffic, it's just going to slow down the economic development of the region. We need pedestrian and bike safety. I think it was Councilmember Harris who said, you know, the ADA accessible questions are significant. I did a site visit with the city of Gaithersburg the other day, and there was extreme, you know, extremely steep sidewalks that if one were in a wheelchair would be like a roller coaster going down and would be inaccessible going up. And so I really hope that we can have some attention to that. My understanding is that this project has been on the books for 18 years, and it just seems time for us to make sure that people can to get some improvements. Even if there are questions around the park about moving up that far north, we still should be able to do intermediate section to make sure that the town center, that Old Town Gaithersburg and up through Watkins Mill are more accessible. And the last thing that I will say, Jim McNulty is one of the 5 candidates, talented candidates who ran for Gaithersburg City Council, and he was one of the 2, along with Lisa Henderson, who was successful. And Jim McNulty has been on this for years, and so I want to put it out there that he is dogged, and I support his effort about adding more Gaithersburg signage on the highways. Things say Rockville as well, they should. But whether it's the ICC or 270 or whatever, there isn't enough awareness that this is the exit if you're trying to go to Gaithersburg. So I want to put that out there, and I would love to continue those conversations. And you are now going to have a Gaithersburg council member following up on some of those issues. So you can answer any of those or none of those, but those are my concerns. And again, I joined with, I talked to Senator Feldman about Watkins Mill and Senator King, and I'm not speaking for either of them, to be clear, but this is not just a District 17 issue, not just a Gaithersburg issue. It is a regional economic development issue when we're talking about Watkins Mill. And so with that, I thank you all for your service and your attention this evening.
Absolutely. Thank you. Let me touch on kind of a few points, and then maybe I'll kick it over to Jim and see if he can give an update on kind of the toll process itself and kind of where that sits as an independent process. So one, on the Rockville platform, you know, I have the same concerns. So, you know, we as a board got information on the delay on the Rockville platform just about 2 weeks ago at the board meeting. Myself, as well as our local constituents or our local officials, have kind of raised some of those concerns, and I'm sharing those concerns with WMATA. I would love maybe follow up with you and see if I can get some more information on the exact kind of buses that you had spoke to Charlie about, because I can, from my board seat, be able to advocate for the same things as well as serving on that board, and happy to kind of follow up and advocate for that at the same time for Thanksgiving, as well as the other holidays that are coming while that construction is happening.
Clarify, it's not a type of bus, it's a frequency.
Frequency, okay.
Yeah. It's really just making sure that people aren't waiting out in cold weather with their suitcases and you know, missing a flight or a train or something.
Sure. I'm gonna also take Holly off the hook at Maryland Transit on the cell service on the ICC, and maybe look at Jim on that one. But I think it's more about maybe we can kind of work with our team and seeing what that issue is. That's not an issue I've heard before, but certainly happy to advocate with others as best we can. I'm not sure it's something that we can directly help, but I'm certainly happy to advocate for that. But maybe kick it over to Jim, give an update on the toll setting process and kind of where that sits today. You're on mute, Jim.
Thank you. How many times have we heard that one, right? Over the past year. But as I mentioned, you know, we've had several public hearings. Matter of fact, Senator Kagan, as she mentioned, was at the public hearing that we held in Montgomery County. And as I mentioned, as a result of that, and I just want to clarify one thing. In our first toll hearings, we were talking about 20 cents as being the minimum per mile rate. It is now going to be 17 cents, not 19. I just want to make sure that was clear. I heard that earlier today, but it's 17 cents. And if I'm not mistaken, during that public hearing in Montgomery County is where that was brought up. I'm trying to remember if it was one of your transportation folks or somebody, but they're the ones brought up. But we thought it would we would coincide it with the ICC, the minimum rate on the ICC, which made sense, and so we lowered it. Now, this coming Thursday, November 18th, the MDTA board is scheduled to vote on the final staff recommended toll rate ranges. And of course, members of the public can sign up to speak in person at that meeting before board members vote. That will be at the headquarters at Broning Highway is where that meeting will take place. And as I mentioned, information on signing up is on our website at mdta.maryland.gov. And we're more than happy to listen to anybody else's comments as we transition that. Secretary Slater is correct that this process for setting tolls is a separate process from the P3, although it is in conjunction with the P3 that's going on. So I guess that's the update that we have at this moment. Again, we'd love to hear from you.
Mr. Ports, about the website, since we were chatting about that.
I'm sorry, you broke up just a little bit. I couldn't quite.
If you want to address the website challenges as well. That you're working.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're talking about the Drive Easy MD website, and we have had some challenges. Concourse is our vendor with that, and they came out with that website, and quite frankly, our folks were struggling to navigate through that website too. And I will tell you this, I was so upset about the website that I actually called the CEO of the company and spoke with him directly. And from that conversation, things started happening, and they are addressing some of our concerns. They haven't addressed all of our concerns, but they are addressing some of them. We as an agency, MDTA, also expanded our website, which now has tutorials on it. So you can click on a tutorial and it'll tell you how to add a credit card or how to update your credit card or how you can add a vehicle. And so while we're waiting for them to make the changes to the website that we have requested, we've put the tutorials in there to help the constituents navigate that site. So, we're trying to do the best we can, but again, I'm going to tell you flat out, I was not happy with the website design.
And that then goes to State Highway. If there's anything more to say about Watkins Mill, pedestrian, bike, an 18-year delay.
Absolutely. I think we have that backlog on a lot of those areas, and I think we're going to be really engaging out there on some of those sidewalks. One of the challenges that we have, and one of the problems that we've had, not necessarily challenges, but one of the problems that we've had somewhat in our program is when we develop sidewalk projects, we often run into obstacles, whether it's a utility or whether it's a terrain like you had described associated with that. And so at times what happens is our teams think, well, this is just too much to overcome, or it becomes too costly of a project where I can kind of get more somewhere else. So what it does is it ends up with these really challenging areas that kind of sit for long periods of time like this. And so I'm not sure exactly what the answer is, because they do, when there's utilities, when the terrain is very challenging, one, they're not ADA compliant. So you have to really make it get into that 3% grade. But two, they are more costly. And so it creates a situation for us where we're able to kind of get less section of sidewalk, but that doesn't make the need any less. And so how do we kind of work on that? I'd love to kind of hear some collaboration or some thoughts on that, because maybe there's some opportunities with, dedicating land from either some of the property owners, or the ways that you can kind of balance that in partnership with the local government to try and resolve some of those more challenging areas. But I recognize that's not a super great answer, but that's the real answer on kind of why those areas in particular sit, because they end up being very costly because of the grade and because of the site conditions and those types of things. And then a lot of times what we'll do to try and resolve that is maybe develop sidewalk maybe on the other side of the road. And then you create a different situation with people having to cross the roadway to kind of navigate this. It's just, we end up chasing our tail at times on some of those, but maybe Tim, anything you want to add on that, or did I capture it?
You captured it well. I think the only thing I would add is, and it kind of feeds into what Delegate Barve mentioned earlier, is just we're looking at using data, but also that feedback that we garnered from the spring with our pedestrian safety action plan. And like I said, we're having another public meeting in December, and what we're doing is we're rolling out where we have our greatest needs or concerns across the state. And it's not just going to be Montgomery County, it's going to be across the state. But happy to get that feedback, and that helps us prioritize. But also we're going to be providing report cards for each county as well, in terms of how we're doing with accidents and injuries and those type of things across the various different vulnerable users. So it's really about, here's our list of priorities. This is how we're going to make decisions. This is where we're going to be making funding decisions, and we need the feedback from our stakeholders and elected officials. So that's really your chance to kind of help us prioritize that even more and move forward with it. So stay tuned on that. We'll be pushing that public outreach soon, and with a public meeting there in December.
So I appreciate that not everything can be funded, not everything can be a priority, but as Council President Hucker said at the very beginning, it's one of the county's top priorities, and there are a lot of us who are watching this. It's just a growing and exciting part of our county and its jobs. Administrator Smith, if you can circle back on signage about Gaithersburg, I'd love to hear about that as well. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, team. Thank you, Delegate Corman.
Thank you, Senator Kagan. We made it to District 16, where things happen. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Chairman Corman. Secretary Slater and your team, thank you for your tireless work on behalf of Maryland, and also giving us those critical updates on the Purple Line. I'm going to ask only one question, and my colleagues, Chairman Corman, Delegate Corman, will probably have other questions, as well as Delegate Sarah Love, both who are on this call right now. My constituents and members of Congress in our area, and organizations such as the Maryland Transit Opportunities Coalition and CADE, and some other organizations, they've raised concerns with us about the accuracy of the supplemental draft environmental impact statement traffic model, and provided us with some specific examples of some possible inconsistencies in their letter that they provided to the Federal Highway Administration, but also these concerns were also highlighted in some social media and some articles. As this involves a substantial project impacting many of our different communities in different areas, including environmentally sensitive and culturally significant areas, is MDOT going to redo the toll lane analysis to address or fix some of the errors identified by that letter that was sent to the Highway Administration? An example of that was, where I-270 and I-495 merge near Wisconsin Avenue, that exit. This area is heavily congested, especially during the evening rush hour. So adding an additional 3 highway lanes before the merge point without extending any lanes past the merge point will create a bottleneck that will worsen the situation with respect to congestion. MDOT's own November 2019 analysis raised concerns about the creation of a new bottleneck if that I-95 was not widened past the merge point. And despite these concerns raised, the SDEIS traffic model that is now in existence concludes that there is no bottleneck that would be created. So
we just wanted to, our constituents and some other organizations just wanted you to address this issue.
Sure. Happy to address it. So let me first kind of talk about the analysis and when a concern is raised and kind of the process there. So, when a concern is raised to our federal partners, we work directly with them and they look at that and they look at all those concerns as they do anything that is raised. But I can tell you that the traffic analysis in the supplemental DEIS followed, accepted professional practices. It used the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments travel demand model, and it had been vetted and validated through simulation models and a variety of really professional practices. And the federal government, because it's the interstate, doesn't really let you cut corners on those types of things. And so a lot of kind of strong professional engineers really went through that model. So I don't have concerns with the model. Now, so the model results itself, I think the bottleneck that you had noted a little bit on kind of that merge area between the Beltway and 270, let me kind of explain what the model kind of shared. And what the model shared, so the traffic that you see in the model is 2040, 2045 kind of traffic. So what you're seeing is this outer year. And what the model illustrated is that sometime between now and 25 years from now, we're going to have to do something operationally on the top side of the Beltway to alleviate an issue. Now, that something can be a variety of things. That something could be just ramp metering like we did on 270. That something could be very small transportation systems management and operations type solutions. That something could be great ridership on the Purple Line kind of running parallel to that and moving some transit solutions along there. So the idea, what that model showed us was that the backup today that is really starting at Connecticut and kind of going in that direction continues to build. And we have to do something in the next 25 years to alleviate that issue to be able to kind of have the full system type improvement. But the volume differences between the build and the no build are less than basically 100 vehicles in that kind of AM peak. So, 1% of the PM peak. So, the trends, we're just continuing to watch those. But I do want to assure you that, the traffic engineers that run those models are very professional. They work with MWCOG, they work with our federal partners, and they vet all of those concerns. So to my knowledge, I don't know that they've responded to those concerns, but I know that they work very closely with our federal partners in being able to address those concerns.
Well, I think that's
because
why
we have heard them.
to probably extend the time for public comment, and as some of my colleagues have indicated, so that we could work together to at least address some inconsistencies or some of the concerns they had about that new traffic model. Because some of it does that they saw contradict MDOT's own analysis that was done in 2019. And so those are things that we just wanted to address. And we wanted to, some time to work with you, also with our federal partners, on some of those things that we see as inconsistencies. But I thank you for all your work on this and for wanting to work with us on this. So.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Senator. Putting on my District 16 delegate hat for just a moment here. Obviously, a lot we could talk about, and we're active correspondents. I'll put it that way, pen pals or text pals. But two issues I wanted to raise, and I'll ask you to just respond to me in writing within a week or so, although I'm going to post those writings on the internet to be the equivalent of a public hearing. Number one is the American Legion Bridge. There was a buzzy local news story about a month ago about chipping away at the bottom of the bridge and rebar being exposed, and an advocacy group that is no doubt going to give you an award in the near future. They love giving awards. They even gave me one. Is raising efforts off of that to back the broader P3 project, as though the only thing standing between that bridge falling down and us and that chipping away at the bottom is the P3 project. So I want to make sure that repair has been done if it's necessary on the area that was exposed. and would also like a better understanding of the exact life left of the American Legion Bridge. Sure. You're going to come back to me with what we can do. It's going to need redecking within 10 years. We're better off just doing the full structural fix now. I get all that. I'd like an actual breakdown though of the timing for both of those things. It sounds like redecking within 10 years, structural life, longer than that, but at some point it does go. And I'll say that I think you know more about bridges than anybody else on this call, if not in this state. And so I have great faith in you and the information you provide, but I'd like a response on that.
Absolutely. Let me touch on it a little bit, and then I'll certainly provide you a little bit more detail.
Touch on it really quickly, because I know a lot of people have been on for a long time. So
absolutely. So the deterioration, I always want to address an issue of if there's any kind of sentiment that someone thinks a bridge is unsafe. The American Legion Bridge is not unsafe. It has a lot of structural life left. And so when you're looking at a bridge like that, what you saw was kind of an exposed rebar from concrete that was being damaged by some water and some drainage issues. So we're now actively kind of repairing the concrete, but also repairing the water issue associated with that. And then what I'll do is I'll follow up with you with the different structural life of the 3 different components, whether it's the superstructure, the piers, or the deck itself. So,
yeah. Okay. And the second question, which again, I just appreciate the response in writing for everybody's time, is actually on the something that you were just talking about with Senator Lee, which in my mind could very easily include the sort of congestion management efforts that you've done on 270 and that are in process on the Baltimore Beltway that are obviously much lower footprint, much lower cost, and much lower controversy than some of the other things you've been talking about. 495 East is, I won't say it's out of the plan, but it's significantly delayed. So it's going to be a long time before anything happens there. And so it's probably time to look at actively doing a similar kind of project on 495 as has been done on 270 is underway on the Baltimore Beltway. And this is the time to do it because of the resources you have. So I'll just let you follow up with me on that. District 15 is here represented by Delegate Chi and Delegate Fraser Hidalgo, but they've declined to ask questions tonight, I think in the interest of everybody's time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the District 14 team of Delegates Kaiser, Lutke, and Queen. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate it. And the District 14 team, we're all connected right now on a text exchange, but I want to thank Secretary Slater and the rest of his extended team. Just a few key projects I want to talk about, some of which have been brought up by other districts. Certainly we're pleased that the Brookville bypass is moving forward. I just had lunch with Karen Montgomery the other day, and she's hoping this happens in her lifetime. So you've heard the goal, make it happen. But we are concerned about some other issues we need that aren't in the draft CTP. Issues have already been brought up about US 29. For us, a lot of the issues, as you know, are Burtonsville and the challenges we have at 29 and 198. And we need to do a lot more to transform Burtonsville, whether it's walkable, livable communities and some other details as well. Next, I would mention, it's actually been brought up by 2 other districts, Maryland 28 and 97. It's there at the corner of our district as well as District 19, but it was brought up by District 17 because of the challenges of people driving north up through Olney. And it's been called a failed intersection by several people, clearly, and it's one of the worst bottlenecks in the county, and we need some help there. And we'd love to hear more about what you're planning there. Further north, I just want to bring up the Laytonsville bypass project. As you know, that the town owns most of the right of way, so it's cost-wise better looking than some other projects right now. But right now there isn't any funding there, and certainly love to hear about that as well. And then just in general, frustration that we have, and this was all of this was in a letter that we shared before, but to highlight again our concerns about pedestrian and bicycle projects across our district, and one place in particular that you've heard about over the years near Sherwood Elementary School, that there are no sidewalks and no easy way to get there. And I would like to, I don't know if my other colleagues will be joining us. I do know that Delegate Queen and Delegate Lutke are online. I think Senator Zucker may have joined us as well, but I think this is it for our district. So just showing the other districts how to do it in 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. I can follow up with some of the detailed plans on some of the intersections that you raised. But rest assured, I worked very closely with Senator Montgomery when that project went through planning years ago, and I still have the same phone number. So we're working pretty hard on that one. And then when she gets really serious, she calls Senator Zucker and he calls me. So we kind of work on that one. But we did get a little bit of a delay with a utility issue and a water main out there, but we're working to get that back on track.
Okay.
I think
And then
that
if you can just follow up with some of the other issues around 29-198, 28-97, as well as the Laytonsville bypass and the pedestrian and bicycle projects. Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if my teammates have anything to add.
Well, Delegate Queen gave a great thumbs up to your reference to how other districts can do it. So we'll try to do better in District 16. So Mr. Secretary, I think that is it for the evening. Let me just say that it's really great to hear of all the communication all my colleagues have with you and the other members of your leadership team. It's great and it's appreciated, even if there's individual projects or other things that we have some static around. We appreciate the overall engagement, and I haven't even been at this that long, and it has not always been that way. So appreciate the tone and tenor that you and your team bring. Chair Kramer, anything else to close us out?
Just want to say I appreciate Delegate Kaiser's showing everyone how it can be done as we go into 3.5 hours. And I thank Secretary Slater for spending that 3.5 hours with us and your team. Very much appreciated. Again, thank you all for your public service. It is very much appreciated and respected. Everybody stay healthy, stay well, and that's a wrap.
Thank you.